Oh, it's not. Oh, there we go. All right. Morning, everyone. Welcome. Today's May 6th, 2026, joint meeting between the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission. We'll begin with an invocation by Pastor Brock Patterson from Longboat Island Chapel, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner George Cruz. Please stand if you are able.
All of the things that you've already done. But Lord, we also give you thanks for all of those who are taking care of us today. Lord, all of those who are doing your work, especially in this Nurses Appreciation Work Week, Lord. We ask your blessings upon them. There's an awful lot of people that take care of us, Lord, and our emergency response personnel. Thank you, Lord, for serving as the heart and the hands of the people, taking care of us. And I ask your blessings upon those gathered here, upon these community leaders. Lord, I ask you give them wisdom. I also ask that you bless them with good health, bless their families. Lord, indeed, they take care of all of us. And I know they take care of me. So thank you for what they do. And bless this time together so that we can be the best that we can be in your service. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you may be seated. Our staff have put together a great presentation covering planning and development, from planning and development services to the CIP, so thank you all very much for that. And if nothing else, I hope the public, the board, and the Planning Commission can take away this. When I read the statute on what enables a planning commission or function to exist, statute defines what a local planning agency is, and it gives, through a local ordinance that we've adopted, prior boards have adopted decades ago, the Planning Commission the authority to also recommend any updates to the Land Development Code or Comprehensive Plan. I think we all know this, but just to restate for the public, people think that anytime a project comes forth, that's planning and so forth, but really, I certainly hope to see after this work session, because we rely on the Planning Commission for advice on future planning, that we do begin to see some self-initiated comp plan amendments, code amendments, small or large. We don't have to wait for a project to come to the desk to make those recommendations. With that, Ms. Knapp, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Knapp, Director of Development Services. And we're here today for a joint work session between our Planning Commission members and the Board of County Commissioners. The joint meeting was requested by our Planning Commission earlier this year in February, and then further supported by the board in March. So that's what brings us here today. Today we're here to discuss all things transportation, if you will. But I'd like you to keep in mind while we're going through this, so we can ask you at the end, the Planning Commission also asked for a joint workshop on stormwater. So if you could think about what type of elements you might want us to include in that presentation, we plan to bring that back to you the first Wednesday, I believe, is the date in August when you return from recess. So you'll notice that the team has prepared a nice packet for you today. This is primarily so you could see any of the maps and data up close, because they won't be as easy for you to see all the way up here on the screen. But also the very front page creates a definition and or common used acronyms, and what those mean is so you can reference back and forth. We tend to speak in a lot of acronyms, so we wanted to make sure you had those at your fingertips. So we're going to start with transportation, and we're going to move through 3 different segments of the presentation, and we're going to pause at the end of each section to ask questions. That's our one ask of you today. If we could try to let Prony get through the first phase, we believe he'll answer most, if not all, your questions, and if not, then there'll be some opportunity for questions. If we could do that, we think the presentation will go a lot faster for you. And so then with that, I'm going to kick it off to Prony, and then when we transition later to the CIP program, then Clark Davis will step forward. So
thank you, Ms. Knapp. And just for the record, we have Commissioner Bob McCann, Commissioner Jason Bearden, and Planning Commissioner Lorraine Prosser on the call.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Prony Bonnet-Fields, Transportation Planning Division Manager with Development Services Department. We are here for the transportation workshop. Before we start, a little bit about myself. Once again, my name is Paul Nibonnet Fields. I was born and raised in Haiti, where I went to earn my bachelor in civil engineering. After working there for 5 years, I went to Belgium to earn my master's in transportation planning. And in the early 2000s, I came here, I went to USF to earn my PhD in civil engineering, construction, transportation planning. After working with Sarasota County, FDOT District 7 in 2009, I started working with Manatee County. Let's start. I will be covering transportation planning items, which are traffic circulation plan, traffic study review process, and comprehensive plan amendment. Clark Davis, Deputy Director for Public Works, will be talking about the CIP and all the components of the CIP. Let's start. What is the traffic circulation plan? Okay, this is adopted in the comp plan. We have them in the Table 5.1 in the Map 5 series. It's about the major roads, not local roads, okay, that tell us about the level of service on the different roads. It's also planned for roads that will be built in the future in the county. But they call them thoroughfares. Also, some of them are considered as arterials and collectors. Based on what? This definition is based on Florida Statute 46, Chapter 234. Based on that, an arterial road is a road relatively high volume traffic, long average trip, and high mobility importance. On the other hand, you have collector road. We can see the difference between these two most likely is about the traffic volume. And it's why, if you look at these two roads, for instance, Bokai and Moccasin Wallow, the difference between both of them are connected to 301 and 41. Even Moccasin Wallow is connected to I-75. The difference between these two is the traffic volume. It's why Bokai is still a collector and Moccasin Wallow is an arterial. Now, we need to understand about how many of these thoroughfares are arterials and collectors. Currently in Manatee County, we have 607 miles of roads that are built currently. But 93 of them are arterials, 224 are collectors, and 190 are arterials under the state. This is county facilities and FDOT facilities. It's what we have now. But what we plan to have in the future is to expand the network. You can see the county is planning to expand the network in North County and East County to meet the demand. It's why you think the growth is going to happen in these areas, which means in the future, we expect to have 750 miles of road. The county network will be expanded, but FDOT will be the same because they don't have any plan to expand the lane miles. They can expand the capacity of the roads. That means from 4 to 6, but the lane miles will be the same. This is what we can say the skeleton of the network. But to understand this map, you have two other elements you need to consider. The first one is Table 5.1. After that is the link sheet. Table 5.1 is going to let you know about the standard level of service, the functional classification of the road, okay, the number of lane, and the right of way needed to build this road. And we also need to need the link sheet. The link sheet is going to tell you about you can find in table 5.1 the project, the adopted level of service. You're not going to find the projected level of service. And also, we need to make the difference between level of service and Q level of service. Okay, level of service most likely on one mode, but Q level of service is multimodal. We can see the county adopted two level of services, C and D, based on the location of the road. FDOT also, they have C and D also based on the location of the road. Also, we have the traffic count stations. It's where the county collect the data for the AADT, which is average annual daily traffic. We collect these every year at the end of the beginning of next year. We can have an idea about the traffic volume on the different thoroughfares. But also, this is the link sheet. We need to understand what's happening now, or the different thoroughfares are performing in terms of level of service. I want to pay attention to these first three columns. Okay, you have standard level of service, existing level of service, projected level of service. It's why when we submit when we take to the board the applications, we always want to make sure we make the difference between these three levels of services. And pay attention to this last column. Okay, this is the available capacity. And we can see every time these numbers are negative, you can expect the level of service to be negative. This is projected level of service. Oh, okay. Every time these numbers are negative, you can expect this is projected, okay? And this is updated every month based on this reserve. Okay, when the county approve an application, you need to reserve the trip. When you reserve the trip, this is going to change. This is going to change as well. This is based on project that the county already approved, not built yet. Now, all these thoroughfares are performing now in terms of level of service. Okay. The county, we have 417 miles under the county. Okay? 6 miles are currently deficient, which is about 1% of the county. On the other end, FDOT, we have 55 miles of road are deficient now, which is about 9%. When you add the Manatee County to FDOT, which means currently in the county, we have about 10% of the road are currently deficient. We can see that, it's obvious, you can see State Road 64, State Road 70, 301, all of them are state facilities. But I want to point out to this, we need to, at the same time, the data from the two bridges, okay, which is Green Bridge and DeSoto, are not included in this traffic study. Because we know these two bridges, they carry a heavy load of traffic. This is the same thing, State Road 64, this segment from next to the hospital, this segment carry a lot of traffic, but these are under the cities, City Palmetto, City of Predenton, they were not included in this analysis. This is what we have now. But in the future, based on the project the county already approved, that are not built yet, okay? If you consider the thoroughfare network the way it is now, if all these projects were to be constructed today, 73 miles of the county facility will be deficient under the county jurisdiction, okay? This is 10%. FDOT, 84 miles, which means if you add the county to FDOT, that's means 22% of the facilities in the county are expected to be deficient in the future if the county approve, if all the projects already approved get COs, and in the meantime, the county doesn't have the means to extend the capacity of the road. We can see, once again, most of them are state facilities, and you have some county facilities as well, Bokai, Moccasin Wallow, Fort Hammer. These are expected to be deficient in the future if the county doesn't have the means to expand the capacity of this road. Before moving to the next segment,
No one's hands are raised. I'll start with Commissioner Ron.
Good morning. Quick question on arterial versus collector. You brought up Buckeye Road. We are constantly reacting to traffic patterns and traffic studies that we do. Can we not get ahead of this? Because we know if we can take a road to an arterial versus a collector, we can get state funding for it. So is there a reason why we cannot designate Buckeye today as an arterial road versus a collector?
Okay.
For us to be able to go out and get DOT funding to help fix the road or help, increase the level of service. We know level of service is not based on the road base; it's based on traffic patterns and traffic flow. But if we were to go out and do it ahead of time, be proactive instead of reactive. Can we not do that and start naming some of these roads that we say that are collectors that we know they're going to be arterials in the next 5 years? Can we not do that?
Okay. This map I showed was based on what we have now. But you're proposing it to change it from, I'm going to talk about that in my third segment. You're proposing to the board today, okay, to change the classification of Buckeye from collector to minor arterial.
I'm just using Buckeye as an example. I mean, we have other roads
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
saying are collectors today, but at some point way out in the future could be an arterial. Can we not say they're an arterial? Can we not designate them as arterials so we can get funding from the state? Or can we not just say these are going to be arterial roads and we can go to DOT and get some funding?
Yes, but for this road, I think they have to meet the classification from FDO from the state statute. But I'm telling you that there are two of the roads. Okay, we are proposing now to change the functional classification. Okay, I will be covering this in my third segment of my presentation. We'll cover this. Go ahead.
Go ahead. And then I have Commissioner Bearden's hand raised.
To add to what Prony is saying, there's, and he'll cover it in his third segment, there's two different maps. There's an existing functional classification map. That map is more or less fed to us by the state. After every decennial census, they update it and they decide what's collector, what's arterial, what's urban, what's rural, and so on. My recollection is that Buckeye's probably in an urban transitioning area and a collector. It is federal aid eligible as a collector, but because of its behavior, and Prony will explain it later, it makes sense to start thinking of it as an arterial for future planning service purposes, and I think he's going to propose that we initiate an amendment with that change and some others later in the presentation. It's not something you'll act on today, but it's to give you a preview of what's coming.
Commissioner Bearden. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My only question is, these multimodal lanes, where exactly are we wanting to put these lanes?
Let me try to go back, Commissioner, for clarification.
Yeah.
You can ask me to stop when you. Okay, which one are we talking about?
Keep going. Back.
I think it's the one where it's the level versus quality of service slide.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back.
There we go.
Okay.
So you're talking about, adding multimodal lanes in specific areas, right? So where exactly are you wanting to put these lanes?
No, the thing is about
Essentially.
we move to LOS to QLOS. Okay, we need to when we decide the road, we need to consider the multimodal concept. We need to consider about for bike lane and sidewalk on the road. This is the concept. That means if you go with level of service only for the drivers, for the car drivers, it will be different if you consider the multimodal. This is the concept. That's means the car only try to accommodate the multimodal typical section in the roads. For instance, if you look at Moccasin Wallow, for instance, it's multimodal. You have bike lane, you have sidewalk, and all the new roads under design now, they have the concept of multimodal.
Okay, but what designates a road that gets multimodal and what a road that does not get that, essentially.
Okay. It's
is
also
what
based
my
on
question is.
it's also based on the context classification. We'll be covering that in my next segment. It's based on the road and the land use. That means if you're in a rural area, for instance, maybe different. If you're urban area, we need to find a way to accommodate this road. We know you're going to have more pedestrian, okay, more cyclists or bicyclists in this area. If you look at Lakewood Ranch, all the traffic on Lakewood Ranch, they are built with the multimodal concept. Some of them have trails. Some of them have bike lane and sidewalk. This is the concept. As long as you have the right of way, we need to go with the concept to build these to meet the means of the citizen. It's
So
also
what supports, so then my question to you is what supports the concept?
the concept
Where are you gathering data, or what type of data is supporting that multimodal concepts are in a specific area where we need to put this concept or this type of road that we're going to build out with these specific lanes for bicycle, pedestrian? Like what are you just building it out?
No, we don't build it out.
It's a good look.
I'm sorry.
It's a feel good thing, or are you saying, okay, this is a great area for this particular type of road?
Okay.
And what type of data are you getting to back that and support that is what my question is.
Okay, it's based on the land use. Okay, that's mean if you are in the urban area or suburban area, okay, you have residential, okay. That's we go with the concept that we need to have sidewalk, bike lanes, because it's the way for people to have other choices for them to move. This is the concept. I'm going to cover this later on about the. It's based on the context classification for FDOT. FDOT define context classification. We try to follow context classification. It's going to tell us. It's going to tell us exactly what typical section to have based on the land use. That means if you're, for instance, in Mayaka, for instance, that means the bike lane may not need it or sidewalk, but if you're in this area down, where we have residential, okay.
Yeah, but then I would have to say we're building a trail. I mean, we're building a trail that's coming up through you understand what I'm saying? So like my question, I don't think you understand what I'm asking you as far as like what justify. I know you're saying like the zoning and whatnot, but like my justification is do we need that or can we expand it to another lane instead of building? Does it actually need that sidewalk? There's what my question is, right?
But if you expand another lane, it's going to be monomode. You're going to expand it for the cars. But if you want to make it multimodal, you need to build sidewalk and bike.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying is that I mean within the justification is does it need a sidewalk there or does it need a lane? I guess is what my point I'm trying to make. And how are you justifying that is what my question is.
And I think Commissioner Cruz, you had a follow up to that. So go ahead.
I want to let Jason finish.
Okay, sure.
I do have a follow up, but I'll let Jason.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's my question is what I'm trying to get answered, but okay.
But
Commissioner Denise Greer with Development Services. The Public Works standards also dictate when we have sidewalks and bike lanes and how many lanes of traffic. So I don't know if that's what you're asking, but we also evaluate based on the amount of traffic if it's even feasible to add another lane.
I guess this is where I'm getting at. So are you guys out there counting how many bikes are going by to see if we need a bike lane?
No.
Or are you just saying, okay, we need a bike lane here because we believe it's just, we can justify enough bikes coming through this lane or not? That's my question in a more simplistic term.
I think we look at the type of uses that are nearby to see if people are going to walk or ride their bikes to Publix or a school, or so we look and see what type of uses are in the area.
Okay. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, since it's a work session, I'll kind of opine on why I disagree with most of that, respectfully. I mean, I've talked about this before, and I've written about this. Level of service is a terrible metric, because first off, it's almost the antithesis of safety. Level of service has to do with how fast you can drive. It has to do with how little the delays are to keep cars flowing, which is a good part of it. So there's validity to it. But, you don't want roads as A. One, that means you have to build all these extra lanes in place of things like, say, sidewalks. You have to maintain those. Go look at the Wall Street Journal today. There's a whole article about how all municipalities are end up bankrupt because they can't maintain the infrastructure they're being forced to put in politically. So all you do is building wider and wider roads to get people to drive faster and faster, which inherently is less safe. But level of service is just that. The problem with the whole argument is counting how many bikes to see, do we need a bike lane? Well, you're not going to count bikes because there's not a bike lane. It's like saying, let's count how many people use the bus in Lakewood Ranch to determine if we should put a bus lane in Lakewood Ranch. There is no bus in Lakewood Ranch, so that's why. That's why there's other metrics, and I've talked to people internally about why we don't use things like the vehicle miles traveled, because I think that's a better metric. If the goal is to move people from one place to the other more efficiently, because if I put a bus lane, a dedicated bus lane on a road, and that's going to move 40 people constantly, that's inherently, by definition almost, going to make our LOS worse, because that bus is going to start and stop, and it's going to take up a lane, and that's going to temporarily make our LOS worse. But it's going to move more people more efficiently, quicker and cheaper, and take less maintenance in the future by doing so. So, there's better metrics we can use, but everyone's hung up on LOS. Every time we have a land use meeting, what's the LOS today? What's the LOS tomorrow, based upon a hypothetical development somewhere down the road? Because everyone just believes the better you can make that letter, the better off everybody is. But that's just not true. One, financially, it's 100% not true. You should never be building to A's and B's. And two, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense economically. It doesn't make sense environmentally. There's better ways of doing this. So to say, what if we take away sidewalks and bike lanes and buses and just build more and more lanes? Let's pave over more green space, make more impervious surfaces, create more liabilities to maintain those things long term, and discourage people from using multimodal options, to force people to get in their cars, even if they're only going a mile down the road to get to the store, because there's no alternative option, because we've used up all those alternative options to put more lanes, to force people into cars, and then say the traffic's bad. Yeah, we created the traffic being bad because we created a car-centric community that you have no option but to get in your car, which creates the traffic. So at some point, somebody has to be able to make the tough decision of, there's a better way of doing this, because this is not a sustainable way of doing it. And constantly focusing on LOS every time we look at anything is a terrible way of doing it, because it's discouraging the very things we should be doing. So even the concept of trading sidewalks for additional bike lanes should be counter to what creates a good community and a safe community and honestly a financially viable community in the long term. That's my opinion.
All right, I'll jump.
I think the main thing is, I think we got to look at our population though, right? Like when you're looking at these additional lanes, like within our population, what is the demographic, right? Who's going to use those lanes? I also want to look at that aspect of it too. Like, is 60% of our population going to really utilize a bike and go from point A to point B to work, or to their local VA, or to wherever that might be? Are they actually going to use that? And another question is, why do we not have bus routes coming into Lakewood Ranch? How do we know that that wouldn't be utilized out here, right? I mean, obviously, there's been data that possibly has been ran, I would assume, to say that, hey, you know what, buses aren't going to work really well in Lakewood Ranch. So that's my only point is I don't want us to make decisions just throwing out there thinking, oh, yeah, we're going to build these multimodal lanes and people are going to use them. Are they? Are they? And we're talking about paving. We're going to have to pave sidewalks over that green space. We're going to have to pave bike lanes over that green space that you're talking about. So
I mean, I just don't want us to continue to make decisions where we believe is the best fit for the community, not based on data that's supporting that. So that's all I'm saying.
Sure, but at least in this case, we can actually look to other communities similar to us. You look at the Suncoast Trail, you look at Legacy Trail, you look at dedicated bike lanes like at the Beach Runner, and the stuff up in Pinellas and Lynx Limo, whatever it is in Orlando. You'll get the dedicated bus lanes that parts of Sarasota put in. You can extrapolate based upon similar population trends, similar age demographics in other communities to see the success or failure of these things, and most of them have in fact been successful. Where I've never seen anyone be successful is building more lanes. Just go look at Houston and places like that where there's 26 lane highways and they're still jammed up for 2 hours a day, and someone's screaming that too many people moved here, let's build 2 more lanes. That's never worked, but I have seen trail systems and multimodal and other forms work in other places.
Anyone from the Planning Commission want to chime in? I'm just curious. This is a joint meeting, last I checked.
Rob Brown. Again, I'm kind of old school. Back in the time when I got it. Back when we had, DRIs and concurrency. It may not be this time, and Clark may be going to talk to it in the future, but, concurrency, we built the roads and we built the infrastructure before the development came. But now we're seeing the projects coming in here and saying, well, okay, the county's not using concurrency, it's using the multimodal process. My question is, how are these multimodal studies done, and how are we using that data to get the correct infrastructure in place at the right time?
Yeah,
I want to say it may be Clark or something, or
It's the very next section of this presentation.
okay.
And just wanted to let people know, Planning Commissioner Bauer is on the phone as well. When it comes to level of service and quality of service, one of the avenues of research I pursued is what are things that other jurisdictions in Florida. Didn't really get a lot of great answers there. So I looked outside the state, and there's examples where I get where you're going with quality of service and multimodal, but I've not seen a transportation network that really escapes level of service. But they do de-emphasize it in place of other metrics, or even going to a point where you define level of service for bicycle uses, pedestrian uses, and even public transit uses, and the numbers look a little bit different. One of the things I would cite is the Transportation Research Board in 2008 came up with a series of metrics for LOS for those types of transportation, and it was quite interesting. They determined, I won't go into the detail, but it's called report. Let me just pull it up. I had it pulled up. It's called, it's from the it's under the Transportation Research Board, but it's the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, Report 616, titled Multimodal Level of Service Analysis for Urban Streets. It can be pretty technical and dense, but the question from that, Prony, is quality of service. It seems to invariably point back to level of service, A through F. But I'm curious, I'm seeing a picture here of different kinds of transportation modes. What research have you done and staff done to move us off or de-emphasize LOS in favor of something that can measure, whether it's LOS or VMT, something that can measure the overall, not overall, but can measure the quality of transportation per mode, and allow us to assess whether we should invest more in one form over the other. I'm just curious.
Yeah, this is based on FDOT. FDOT provided the data, and if you look at that, you have all the different modes. You have level of service for bicycle, pedestrian, and bus. And FDOT provided the data for QCLOS. We decided to follow these data from FDOT standard.
The only thing I've seen from DOT is contact classification and some data, but nothing saying I guess this is just me opining now, but I would really encourage this board, planning commission, to take a look at alternative forms of measuring transportation, health, quality. One of the things certainly is VMT. Some of that does a lot of that does tie back into air quality and environmental pollution regulation. It's an important metric, but I also think if we can find an opportunity to provide more depth, more breadth with what we're measuring, and then depth within those metrics. So, for example, for bus transit, all we have is a distinction between ridership levels at 15-minute intervals or 20-minute intervals. That doesn't really tell me the quality of service. That doesn't tell me how long a bus is stuck in traffic. With bicycle, for example, there's nothing that really tells me, are they going in what's the quality distinction between shared use lanes, like a trail, or like a bike lane that's adjacent to or on a street, for example. Nothing that measures it, and the quality of the experience they have, how much road debris they run into, how many signalized intersections or unsignalized intersections they run across. Those are things that I think the report touches on, but just something for this board to look at, and I think staff too, when we're looking at not this comprehensive plan update, but future transportation ones. I think this board and the public need some depth, because when we see some, so get hands raised, when we see LOS A through F, as Commissioner Cruz said, it forces a board to look at investing in just the road capacity. It doesn't even look at functionality, like with in Commissioner Ron's district, Elcon, there's a study going on there. LOS captures none of the safety metrics or information that are going into improvements for safety at Elcon. Same for RI, so we're tracking that separately. All that to say, LOS is not the best metric for us, I think. One for roads needs to be inclusive of safety metrics, but, and there's a lot of those out there, and also needs to dive into LOS for those modes of transportation, bicycle, ped, bus. I'll just leave it at that. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Shula.
Great. So appreciate the comments so far. I did come here to learn a lot more about this, so I appreciate your slides. Every time I see these in project plans, I'm getting just small pieces of it, not just the discussion about how you came to the decision. So thanks for putting this together. I had, before I respond to you, Mr. Chair, I did want to ask, I think you should have the FDAB line on your road slides for both current and future. I think you should show that so people understand where we're sort of putting the brakes on more density from the FDAB, just on both of those slides that you had there. And then it would have been really nice to see those current and future slides overlaid. So you showed what the current future is. They were two separate slides, but it would have been nice to sort of see that overlap. Like, here's what you're currently looking at the future roadway to be. If you can slam those two right on top as a layer, maybe it's easier for the public and us to see how that's changing, how the existing classification is, and how that's changing. Just a couple of things that were going through my mind there. But you asked what sort of planning commission things we could think about, and no matter what the road type is, I feel like that's an amplifying piece of information to the base question is, what's the acceptable ratio of project completions here? And what I mean by ratios are, you have a 10-year SIP planning to delivery, at best case 10 years. I'm talking, it's more like 12 when you start talking about it, and then you put pavement on the ground. That's 10 years for county projects. But you have, and we currently have and have had over the past 10 years, I'm saying commercial, but I don't mean commercial or residential. I mean just projects are coming to this board and getting approved and put in the ground at a 3-year cycle. They're delivering in 3 years. We're delivering in 10 to 12 years. So how do you close that gap, that ratio, and what's more acceptable? Because the ratio we have now is clearly not acceptable. We could talk about whether it's got a bike lane or whatever, but what's a more acceptable ratio? 12 to 3 is not acceptable, because that leaves you with almost 8 years or 9 years of residents feeling the impact of that delay. So what's the solution to that? I mean, we could spend more money on our capital investments, right, or our SIP projects. And I think you're already doing some of those things by tightening the reins on your project approvals. I see that in the ratio of projects that are getting approved just this year alone. So I think you're approaching one in projects, and you said don't just focus on the projects. You asked us at the beginning, hey, you guys work on projects, but think about planning. Well, that's what I'm thinking about in planning. Closing the 12-3 gap, that needs an investment from this county, and I don't like to pay more taxes. I hate to see that spending, but we have a war chest of cash that needs to be invested, and I really hope you do that. And if you're asking my planning commission idea is, our plan should be to invest in our infrastructure, and then we could probably all get together as a team and lay this out, I think, by district commissioners to evaluate each one of these segments. What are your wants, needs, and what you have, right? Here's your three. Here's what you want. Here's what you need. And here's what you currently have. And then prioritize them 1, 2, and 3. What's your priority of those? I think if you lay that out as a team or in a group discussion, or if the staff does it, and then each commissioner sort of looks at it, then you talk about, okay, do you want it? Do you need a road? Do you want a multimodal road? And what do you currently have? And because each district commissioner should be able to represent their district and say what they have seen and what is impacting them, because that's what they're bringing to us, right, is their community's needs or their community's concerns. But that ratio is what needs to close. 2 methods to do that: restricting projects and investing more in the infrastructure. And this could go beyond roads to stormwater and water quality and so forth. But that's my comments to that, and appreciate the education today.
No, thank you. One quick thing.
Regarding the FDAB, I think.
Well, let me finish real quick.
In my third section, we're going to see what I'm proposing now. The FDAB being part of the is going to be shown on the map.
Yeah, so the FDAB line, that's in the future thoroughfare section. Yeah. It's the purple line further down there. If you look at proposed, we'll cover that in a bit. Why don't we just go to the next slide, actually? We can start moving to that.
The Commissioner, we're talking about the gap, 3 years and 7 years, talking about close the gap, the time for us to build the facility. What?
No, what I mean is a development comes in or a project comes in, and they are start to finish, they're putting a demand on the infrastructure in 3 years. They are releasing traffic and residents onto your roads and your infrastructure in 3 years. They want to turn the product, right? They want to turn the table, or they want to get their residents in, they want to get their profit. It's taking us 12 years to deliver infrastructure. So that's a gap that we need to close somehow. So that's what I mean when I say a project comes before the county gets approved, and those residents are in there and demand on the system exists in 3 years, and you're 8 years away from providing a suitable road or a multimodal opportunity to connect to the publics that they built down the street. That's what I mean. That's not you guys doing the project faster.
The concept is when we have the CO for the specific application, that doesn't mean this facility is deficient at that time. And even if we identify the deficiency, for us to build a road, there's no way you can build it in 3 years. Okay, we need to identify the need. We need to put it on the CIP. Okay, if you have the funding, we need to go to the study. We need to go to the design. Okay, after that, we need to write off acquisition if it's needed, and for the infrastructure to be built. If you look at Mogas and Wallow, for instance, it has been on the road for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. It takes some time for us to identify the need and to have this road constructed. It's not also...
No, please, I understand. What I'm saying is existing now in west of the FDAP, I think there is enough projects that are already digging dirt right now that are already impacting the infrastructure levels of service and enough data of those trips for a reasonable decision to be made on those infrastructure improvements. I'm not challenging whether or not a new project already for 200 homes digging dirt right now that are already impacting. God, is that you?
Can we go back to the Zoom screen so I can see who's on the meeting, and then good. Oh, okay. So it went down. Oh,
Yeah,
there we go.
What I'm saying is I understand what you're saying. Like just because a project pops up on Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, that you got to change your roadway. I think it's clearly, and I hear it every week at your meetings, there's clearly people that are concerned about this, and there's enough projects already in the hopper to prove out that this needs to happen. So that's why I'm suggesting that we look at doing this faster. You don't have to create a new road. It's just the data is already there supporting the need for the infrastructure improvement. It doesn't take a complex spreadsheet to prove that out.
It doesn't, but it does take a spreadsheet to count the money necessary. We could design every road this weekend if everyone works 24 hours a day. We probably have most of them designed, but we can't pay for them. Like I think that's the missing piece of like this concept that every 2 years people get voted in and we sit here and outside of the sunshine maliciously figure out how not to build infrastructure to make people's lives miserable is a fallacy. If it was up to us, we would fix all of the infrastructure, because then other than animals and a few other things, we'd have no one complaining about anything. But that's not reality. We have a finite amount of money, and unfortunately a disproportionate share of the money, because concurrency was effectively gotten rid of at the state level, and we'll talk about that next. I don't want to take your thunder. Comes from impact fees, and impact fees come from developments getting CO'd and then giving us money to build the roads. There are some ways around that, but they're not, in my opinion, they're not best case scenarios. Like people talk about impact fee credits, which effectively is a roundabout way of concurrency, because you can encourage some developer to put some road in prior to their development or concurrent with their development, which sounds great. However, they're geo-fenced into the immediate area of that development. And so the impact fees they would otherwise pay us, say, off of Rye Road, they would pay us this money, or a bad example, they'll build something someplace where there's not a huge infrastructure. And you're like North River Ranch, let's throw Pat under the bus here for this one. They agreed to build Fort Hammer Road, which at the present time effectively only benefits North River Ranch because it goes straight through North River Ranch. It's a spine up through the middle. Eventually it's going to benefit everyone, but right now it doesn't. But everyone up in North River Ranch has an amazing 4-lane road, divided, landscaping, it's beautiful. We used impact fee credits to get that. In the short term, concurrency, which everyone's clamoring for, that's what it is. The long term, we could have collected tens of millions of dollars of impact fees, and we could have been connecting Buffalo to 60. We could have been fixing Erie Road. We could have been working on Mendoza. All those were in the same quadrant. All could have been fixed by people who've lived there for a decade or more, 12 years, patiently waiting their turn to have their roads fixed. But instead of using the impact fees for the next up, for golf course, for Rye Road, all of those could have been used, that impact fee could have been used for. Instead, somebody said concurrency, let's have Fort Hammer widened using impact fee credit. That's what that is. That's the roundabout way of working back into the system. But the fallacy is there's people, that concurrency is supposed to benefit the whole community, when in reality concurrency is disproportionately benefiting the new people, the people moving here from Ohio, moving here from New Jersey, people moving into these new houses that are being built by new developers in select places because it's fixing their intersection. They're putting in their turn lanes. They're putting in their spinal road for future benefit, instead of saying, okay, who's next? Who's been waiting the longest? Where are all those people in Rye Wilderness that are stuck in traffic on Rye Road? How do we widen that road? Because there's only 3 ways to pay for widening roads. There's impact fees, which if we do concurrency is going to be hyper-focused on the new development and not where the biggest need is that's waited the longest. There's appropriations, which are few and far between, and the state's pulling back on member programs. We're going to have new Congress people up in D.C. all around us, so that they're going to be harder. Or the current taxpayers pay for it. And for a few years, that's what we were doing. We bonded hundreds of millions of dollars for Upper Manatee and for 75th and all these roads, but all the debt service of those are being borne by the people who already lived here. And so if you want to fix all of this, if you want to catch up infrastructure, which you hear about on the campaign trail, we're going to build all this infrastructure before we approve anything, someone's going to have to make the tough decision to bond like $1 billion. Look at Sarasota. Here's a perfect example. Sarasota just had a report come out that they were $1.77 billion behind. I think that was the number. $1.77 billion behind on infrastructure. So they're trying to figure out how to do it. But even they're like, we can only go up a certain amount on impact fees because of state. And they're talking about potentially floating hundreds of millions of dollars worth of bonds, debt service paid by the taxpayers, and proposing a 1% additional sales tax down in Sarasota right now to catch up infrastructure. So everything's a give or take. If you want the infrastructure, it's got to be paid for. It's not free. And right now, there's a finite amount of impact fees because of the state. We're being sued on our impact fees because this board did, in fact, try to substantially increase them. There's a finite amount of appropriations. The easiest way to get money, but the most painful way to get money, is from the taxpayers between sales taxes, increased millage, and bonding. Those are the easiest ways, but they're being borne by everybody. So people have to make decisions. Everyone keeps saying the first part, build roads. Okay, we're up for it. We got staff to do it. How do we do that? And concurrency, I don't think, is the answer, because that was a great answer until it was no longer a great answer, because all the people who didn't have concurrency for the past 20 years didn't have their infrastructure built on Golf Course, on Rye, on Erie, on Mendoza, on Ellington Gillette, on Canal, on 17th, they're never going to have there's not a whole lot of new development on Rye right now, because we've been declining them because of traffic. There's no development in places like Mendoza and places like that. When are they ever going to get the roads built if we focus back on concurrency or do it in a roundabout way with impact fee credits? So I don't think that's the long-term solution, because those people are just going to be permanently stuck in what's perceived as a bad situation. And the new people in the furthest away areas are going to be the ones with the 4-lane roads and the 10-foot sidewalks that you can use golf carts, and the landscape medians with the palm trees. The new people are going to be the ones that benefit, because they're going to capture their own impact fees through credits.
Yeah, I understand. The impact fee credits aren't super exciting to me when I hear them in projects, for that same reason, because the impact fees only build the road, they don't maintain the road.
Correct.
Right? So that's again born later on. You hope the road lasts 7 years if they did it right. If we supervise that, if our engineers did the right job and it doesn't fail prematurely, right? So I love hearing you say, like, hey, impact fees aren't the end all be all. I guess I need better education on the money that we have in our war chest reserve to be used for that. Admittedly, I need more information on that. I need more information on that amount of money that we hear. There's a budget hawk guy that comes to most of the meetings. I love it whenever he's there, because he really talks about how much money we have back there. I just love hearing him.
He makes up those.
Hopefully he doesn't make them up, but the point being is, sometimes you do have to dig into your war chest, right? Sometimes you have to dig into those savings. And are we not able to do that because we're bonding based on that amount of money? That's what I don't know, and I'm admittedly saying I don't know that. When you say give me an answer, I need more information to propose another solution. But sometimes when you're stressed financially, like a resident might be after a terrible hurricane season, you have to dig into your war chest, right? Your little nest egg for the payoff later. And that's what I'm suggesting, or I'd like to know more about. I'm sure this meeting isn't the one to cover that, but is there budget opportunities to dig into our, rainy day fund or our war chest of emergency reserves to make these changes? And that doesn't need to be on Rye Road or out east. That could be in District 2, right? I drive down some of these roads. I'm going to go down there later to go to a shop that I have some work getting done on. And those roads are terrible. I mean, the sidewalks are terrible. Like, I understand that they are. I think they've waited in line long enough. So that's what I'm suggesting, and I need more information on. I understand the funding streams that you're considering, but I would like to know more about how we fund these things. What are we keeping a rainy day fund for if when it rains we don't use it?
Sure. I mean, I would be cautious to believe numbers. a lot of the reserves that you hear about are like we have hundreds of millions of dollars reserved for a new reverse osmosis plant for water and for pipes we're putting out for the East Well field. Those are utility funds. That's an enterprise zone. You can't move those to roads. We've got whole reserves for the expansion of Rocky Bluff Library. That came from a dedicated library millage and library impact fees. You can't use those for roads. We've got a lot of reserves, but they're tied to specific things, and sometimes it's because something's going to cost $100 million, and we have $90 million. We have to wait till we get to 100 to use that money. In the interim, there's $90 million sitting there, and people point to that like, look at this slush fund. But that's not factually correct. We just need to get we're collecting the money to build something, and that's why we start collecting that money 10, 15 years early, so we can collect it incrementally until we need to use it.
So can I ask a broader question? So let's just take, we had the hurricane relief money, that slug of cash that came in, and we're working on distribute, the name, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, the
Lasting Manatee.
The Lasting Manatee, right?
Sure.
So was it 60% of that we're able to use on some infrastructure improvements, right? And I think you took 40% to deliver to residents. Is that what?
50% has to go towards housing.
Okay, so 50% towards housing. So let's just think about, let's say it's, I'm using round numbers, 200 million.
It was 253.
It was 250, but okay, 250, you use a percentage of that. The way I see that in my brain here is if 40% of that was given to us, right? That means, well, what's 40% of that come out to? What, 110 million?
Well, chunks of this money went to municipalities and so forth too. You're working off of the gross.
If we now got $110 million of grant money because of the storm, well, then that tells me you should be able to double that. You should be able to spend the other, if you had 110 that you didn't have to spend and now you're getting it, why not use that?
Sure.
Like, you just got plussed up.
Yeah, but that's why people get blinded by infrastructure. Know what that 110 is going for? It's going for stormwater mitigation. It's going for fixing our maps, all the things that people come into our chambers.
No, I know what it's getting invested in. What I'm saying is there's more. If that money hadn't come along, would we have spent it anyways? If somebody didn't, fly that money in on a grant for the devastation, would we have been able to spend that amount of money to do the stormwater stuff because we didn't have an emergency? That's what I'm asking.
I get you, but again, I mean, you made a valid point. I'm not trying to debate you on this. This is a work session, so I want to talk about the maintenance cost of it. You want to take money that is a one-time thing and you want to spend it on stuff that becomes a long-term obligation that we're never going to get back
that
again.
We will need.
Sure. Hold on.
Anthony, let him finish.
And everyone wants to, quote unquote, put infrastructure in before development. But the minute you put the infrastructure in, whether it be pipes for utilities or it be roads and sidewalks for transportation, you immediately start the clock on having to maintain those. How early do you put these in? How early do you build the 4-lane or 6-lane road when you only need a 2-lane road or possibly no road at that point in time to have it there ready to go? Because you're immediately preparing to maintain it, and you may not even have the tax base to cover the cost of the maintenance if the development doesn't come in. But what's actually going to happen is you go out and you're going to widen some roads. You're going to put a 4-lane road where only a 2 is necessary, or a 4-lane road where none's necessary. You're going to end up with even more development because now people are going to see all this pent-up capacity opportunity. And if you want proof of it, look at 44th. Nobody was proposing anything in the Elwood Park area and stuff like that because it was at the end of a dead-end road. As soon as 44th was even being contemplated to being finished with the flyover, we saw 2 different projects on 44th because someone said, now there's demand, now there's capacity, I want to build this, and I'm going to fill that capacity up immediately. So putting the infrastructure in ahead of time is actually going to accelerate development, not slow it down. But in the interim, until that development happens, the maintenance cost is still going to be borne by the people of this town that don't even drive on that road because there's no place to drive to. But we've got roads in, and if you want to see that, go look at all the roads around places like Lehigh Acres and all around Fort Myers and Cape Coral back in 2009 and 10 and 11 and 12 when there were 4-lane roads to nowhere with dead palm trees in the medians because they put all the infrastructure in ahead of time because they floated CDD bonds, built all these roads, and then nothing got built for half a decade. And all those roads effectively crumbled and more or less had to be torn up, and all the pipes ended up crumbling because you got to keep the water flowing through them to keep them maintained. So I get what you're saying, but it's a balancing act, and it's a hard balancing act to perfect. And if some other municipalities perfected it, we would take the best practices. But I don't believe any municipalities ever perfected it.
And
You're right. It is a working session. I appreciate the conversation. It is all about planning. And I'm just saying that it's not what you're saying ahead of time or ahead of, they're here. It's here is my counter to that, right? It's not, we're not estimating that need is coming. It's generally here in a majority of these areas, bound by an FDAB that's getting pushed. So by the analogy of Fort Myers and these things that may never get used, I'm just trying to emphasize that if we're going to plan, we should plan for where we are, I think, right now, and that is an infrastructure deficit. I mean, I'm not here to, I don't think anybody would argue that. I mean, I hope you're not anyways, but
All
I
right,
appreciate
hold on.
it. This is a plan, so
I'm
good
going to
talk.
jump in here. So I think good points have been made. Commissioner Cruz, I agree with you. Commissioner Shulo, I think you're expressing generally the frustration of virtually everyone in the county. But you don't just plan for today. That's reactive. You plan for tomorrow. So here's my thought on that, right? We don't have infinite money. The solution to what you're suggesting is we have a treasury and we print manatee dollars and use that to fund infrastructure. The reality is we have limited funds. And I think the days of with the state projecting deficits, unless they change something drastically in FY27 and beyond, we're also not going to see a lot of revenues coming through appropriations there. With a new member of Congress, we're competing with 5 other counties, not going to see a lot of money coming there in the near future. And we don't know where property taxes are going. We're projecting what could be anywhere from a 0.7 mil reduction if you eliminate home property taxes for homestead properties to, I don't even know what the millage, like no millage? It's not no millage, but whatever that number looks like if all of them are eliminated. And that's on top of what we've been considering. So the only solution is what we're doing now, which is slowing or stopping development, not stopping, denying applications on roadways that we know have problems, like Rye and others. I won't mention specific projects. In the long term, we talk about planning, right? Why don't we get to Prony's next section here, traffic study, and then we can actually get to the element 5, which covers planning. So go ahead, Prony.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I had a statement. Hold on, I had a statement.
Commissioner Bearden, we're gonna. I appreciate your input, but why don't we go to we're gonna go to the next slide, and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead, sir. Prony.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your questions. Traffic study review process now. What's happened before 2024, before the county decided to repeal transportation concurrency? At that time, when the applicants who made the traffic study should cover, identify the impact related to the application, and also find a way to mitigate the impact. It was before 2024. And at the same time as well, we need to go about the background improvement. The background is impact caused by projects that were approved before the current application. And at the same time, they also required to mitigate and the access as well on this specific segment of the road. It was before 2024. After 2024, Manatee County repealed transportation concurrency. The extent of the to review the impact is the same, but the way to mitigate the impact is different. One of them because of the Florida Statute 163-3180. If you can read the paragraph here, the segment in the paragraph in yellow, the local government may not use an alternative transportation system to deny time or phase an application for site plan approval, plat approval, final subdivision approval, building permits, all these things. Which means now, because of the impact fee, you pay and go, That means you're supposed to collect money to identify, to mitigate the impact because you don't have any transportation concurrency anymore. Which means when they submit the traffic studies for applications that have to go in front of the board, CPA, GDP, they submit what they call the MSASA. It's multimodal site access and safety analysis, where the first impacted thoroughfares are identified, analyzed. In this case, they have to build a specific turn lanes. It's for CPA, GDP. But when applications that don't have to go in front of the board for PSP, FSP, it's why they have what they call the TRR, Tree Preservation Report. In this case, they need to submit to the county the lengths that will be impacted by the specific application, and you need to reserve. You need to reserve the trip on this length. It's what I told you in first segment of this presentation, that the length sheet being updated every month, because when we have a FSP, when you approve the FSP, you need to reserve the trip for the specific length. Now, what we have, that means you identify the impact with MSASA, no background improvement, and for the operational analysis and TRR, we need to have the site access analysis, and also we need to identify the access point that have to be built by the developer. This is what we have now. It's based on the new traffic study guidelines that was published, I think, 2 months ago. This is the concept, this is the way we review traffic study. This is the requirements that the applicant have to meet now when they submit the traffic study, after we repeal transportation concurrency in August 2024. Do you have any available for any question you may have, commissioners?
Any questions? No one's hands are raised.
Yeah, no, I had my
Go ahead,
hand
sir.
raised. Just put it down. No, I'm going to have to agree with Anthony on this. I mean, this is a bunch of nonsense, the way that we're doing things. What we're essentially saying is continue to do the same thing over again like they did the last 20 years and continue on the same track where our infrastructure is not freaking developed, and keep doing the damn thing, same thing over and over again. What we're doing right now is wrong. The direction that we're headed right now is wrong. We need to make some changes. We need to make them quick. If it's concurrency, okay. If it's maybe a hybrid model of concurrency, we need to figure that out, and we need to figure it out today, because you know what? They decided not to spend the money on their infrastructure, and look at the situation that we're in right now. Now we're paying $8 million a mile. We got one bidder that's bidding on most of our roads. And I'm just not happy with what I'm seeing and the plans for the future of this county and how we're doing things right now. And I haven't been, and you guys know I haven't been. So to just say, hey, we're just going to continue to keep doing what we're doing is saying, the hell with it. We're just going to back up our roads 10 miles now. Let's do that. That's all I have.
All right. Commissioner Ballard.
So just in response to Commissioner Bearden's thoughts, I think we all agree that we would like to have the infrastructure and we would like to have it quickly. But the question is, with the regulatory framework that we have at the state level and the funds that we have, how do we achieve it? And it's a conundrum. Yeah, like we can say all day, like it needs to change, but
Well, Commissioner Ballard, I'll say
Hold
this.
on,
We
Commissioner
don't
Bearden, we're
achieve
going to
it.
let Commissioner Ballard finish.
We'll have to say this. Because
Commissioner
we're
Bearden,
dialoguing.
I'm going to let Commissioner Ballard go first. I'll come back to you. Let's not interrupt each other. Commissioner Ballard.
he can go ahead. I'm good. No, I was done.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Bearden. All right. Anything else, Commissioner Ballard? I'm good. Got it.
I just wanted to say that, yeah, tough nut to crack here altogether. Commissioner Sadiq, you had said, planning is not what we're here to do, but it's not realistic to plan if you haven't cleaned up your current mess. I mean, think about it. I mean, I love looking at what we could potentially do and when cars are flying or all this other stuff in 20 years. But I mean, we got a mess to clean up now. And I would love to get more information on that particular budget. But looking at the budget numbers right now, Manatee County published $162.4 million in reserve capital project funds, $685 million in the budget stabilization unrestricted cash balance. I don't know what all can be grabbed out of those things. But these are the things that when you ask me to plan, I'm like, all right, well, tell me what we got. Tell me what we got to work with here to give you some ideas. And Commissioner Cruz, I completely agree with you. You want an answer. You're probably spending more time than I am thinking about this stuff. So that would be helpful to understand what we had to work
Hold
with.
on, I have Lorraine on. Commissioner Brosser, go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Prony, for this very informative slideshow. If I understand correctly, you're saying that there's no background improvements or they're no longer required through the traffic study process. Is that correct?
Because the background improvement used to identify impact created by projects that were approved before. That we need to put them on the list, but at the end of the day, they should be on the county. If that's mean if the developers didn't mitigate this impact, it should be on the county dime to improve them. You don't have to identify them anymore because at the end of the day, it will be the county if they are not identified, they will not be mitigated at the beginning. But now we don't list them anymore because there is no transportation concurrency.
So if those needs are not captured, where are they captured? Is it the CIP, the impact fee program, mobility plan, or somewhere else?
They should be in the, we have them in the list for infrastructure planning. We know exactly where they are, but should be part of infrastructure planning to mitigate this impact.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Why don't we go to the next segment here, future thoroughfare.
Thank you, commissioners. We're talking about comprehensive plan amendment, element 5. See the map 5 series. What you're proposing now, try to do every 5 years.
Actually, excuse me, Prony, sorry. Why don't we take a 10-minute break and then we can come back to this? I suspect the dialogue will be pretty substantial here. We'll take 10 minutes and be back at 10:35. Okay. There we go. All right, welcome back. Now we're going to start with the third part of our meeting today, looking at element 5.1, the comprehensive plan, the future thoroughfare network. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. It's map 5. Okay, map 5 series. We want to update this. I've been doing that every 5 years to go with MPO and also FDOT. When we approve this map in 2022, in the meantime, we have some updated in the county thoroughfares. In 2022, this was the existing roadway. Now, we want to update it to include 44th Avenue East. That was not built at that time. Now we have 44th Avenue East. The same thing, we didn't have Fort Hammer was not connected to Buckeye. It's connected now. It's time for us to update the map to show the current thoroughfare network. 5B is functional classification. Currently, Buckeye is a collector. And University Parkway is a minor arterial. We are proposing to change Buckeye as a minor arterial and University Parkway to be a principal arterial because of the traffic volume on this segment of the road. What you are proposing now to the board.
And just to comment, this is a copy the board received at a meeting earlier this year, correct? It's the same map. There haven't been any changes? Or have there been changes? Oh, you changed, okay, good. You changed Buckeye.
We changed Buckeye, yeah. We got Buckeye now from a collector to a minor arterial.
I see, but that wasn't in the original amendment
No,
that you
it was not.
proposed.
It was not.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Are the
Val.
changes, are the changes the ones that are circled here?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, we want to remove EE Road. It's not going to be a collector anymore. It's not going to be a thoroughfare anymore. It's going to be a local road, but it's not going to be in the thoroughfare anymore. EE Road.
Where is that located? Okay, it's the small, oh, I see, the small.
The circle.
Kind of miss it there.
Commissioner, it's between Sawgrass and Carter Road that goes through Parish Lakes.
Oh, okay. That one's not on our handout, but can you just explain that a little bit?
Because the developer decided work with Public Works to remove these as a thoroughfare on the Parish Lake development. It will be going to connect these two facilities. It's not going to be a thoroughfare, it will be a local road.
Okay, I think that was because of an agreement between two developments, right? That was the north-south connector there.
Yeah,
Okay,
between the developer and also Public Works Department.
got it.
And we also added East River Ranch. This segment was approved when we approved East River Ranch. Oh, okay. Okay. Can you hear me better now? We also added East River Ranch, and when we approved East River Ranch development, the developer decided to add the north-south. This is the north-south from Rangeland to 64. We decided to add this on the map as well.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Shula.
This is, can you go back?
No, I just had a question about another road. About this time last year, when a project was approved at Mulholland Road and Fort Hamer, there was some concern about the classification of Mulholland Road. Did that ever get changed in terms of classification? Even though it goes to nowhere currently, it can't get changed?
I asked it to be downgraded to avoid another Fort Hamer Commons kind of situation, but Senate Bill 180, we were told, prohibits us from, it would be more burdensome to lower the classification until Senate Bill 180 goes away, so we're stuck with it.
And to be clear, the classification of Mulholland Road currently is
A collector.
a collector to nowhere.
But we can't downgrade it. We can upgrade it.
No, one segment. But do the segment, I think, east of the segment from Rye Road is not to nowhere. We can see this other segment is here.
No, Mulholland ends at the bridge that's closed.
Yes.
But I don't know if there's no proposal for continuing that road. It's not in a SIP to build that bridge or to connect those two. So you have two Mulhollands essentially. So Mulholland East, Mulholland West, are they both going to get a different classification, or I didn't understand this change that SB 180 made that says you can't downgrade it.
We just talked about this a couple of meetings
Okay.
ago,
I
and I proposed lowering it so that it would avoid some of that higher intensity opportunities and bonuses and calling things commercial nodes that aren't. But we were told that we cannot because lowering that would take away people's potential proposed rights, and that would be more burdensome and restrictive to those people. And it was deemed to have violated Senate Bill 180 if we attempted to do that.
Are there any other roads that aren't circled on here that had been, let's say, discussed for changes that were controversial, let's say, I don't like that? Are there any other that aren't circled on this slide?
You're talking about classification or right-of-way? No.
Yes, classifications that you attempted to make but were restricted because of the language in current state bill.
So he's asking if we tried to downgrade any
No,
others.
no, any of them, no.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, currently you've got like eight functional classifications on the current map, and then the proposed maps is only down to 5. Say the rural, there used to have a rural, minor, and major collector, and now it's just a collector road. What's the functional difference?
I'm talking about which map?
Well, you're looking at the current map. You have
Which map? Which one? 5B?
5A.
5A?
Right.
Okay, let's go back to 5A.
He's talking about the legend in the bottom
Legend.
left.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got
5A
Yeah, you've got 8 different classifications.
and proposed 5A. You see? Current 5A, proposed
Okay.
5A.
And I'm looking at the 20.
The existing functional classification map
Yeah.
uses a different stratification than the future ones. The existing functional classification map is informed by a Florida Department of Transportation map that's generated after every decennial census. It needs to know the difference between principal and minor arterials in the urban area and in the rural area, also those arterial distinctions, but urban versus, major versus minor collector in the rural area is important because only the major collectors in the rural area are federal aid eligible. And so this is more, it tells you how they're working today at a finer breakdown than the future maps, where it's more important just to know whether it's intended to be an arterial or a collector.
So in the future, 2050, if it's classified as a collector rule, it will qualify for federal funds? I mean,
The road would need to be there. Basically, federal aid eligible stuff is usually helping us if there's recovery from disaster and things like that. So we don't typically apply for MPO funds or anything like that for roads for minor collectors in the rural area.
okay.
It's complicated, but the existing
Well,
functional classification
I'm trying to clarify between major, minor, and rural, urban, as far as the future land use or the future maps go, what the ramifications are.
The existing functional class map gets used some in determining whether or not something's eligible as a commercial node. They're looking whether it's a collector or arterial today where it meets another one. The distinction's also important as indicated for the federal aid eligibility, and then the major and minor part of it is typically a function of volume, more so than anything else. It could be used to inform road design. You combine it with context classification, decide if you should have bike and ped facilities that have greater separation between the roadway and the user and the non-motorized users, that sort of thing. The future one is more of a planning thing about whether or not you expect that road to have higher volumes or lower volumes on it, which can guide the number of access points you might allow on it.
Commissioner Ron?
Real quick, when and how can we determine if we need to change a collector to an arterial? Is that something we can do on our own, or is that something we have to wait for some census to come out or whatever? Or like Bourneside, for example, we have it as a collector. And let's say 3 years, 4 years from now, we decide, wow, that really should be an arterial. Is that something we can make the determination on and send it up to FDOT and say, this is what we want to do? Or do we have to wait for their determination to come back and tell us that it's okay that we change that?
They'll tell us what they think it is on the 5A map. That's the classification from their study. We don't do it often, but we can add roads to that existing functional classification map between those decennial census updates, but we tend to be consistent with their approach to it. So a lot of things come on as collectors or minor arterials, depending on use. I think theoretically you could paint all the roads red and call them arterials if you wanted to, and the state probably wouldn't care. I mean, it's more of a planning tool than it is anything else. But it does make a statement about what you expect for the road. As Prony explained earlier, you expect a higher speed, longer trips, less access points on your arterials, and then you get...
Well, I'm just trying to determine, is it a decision that we make or is it a decision the state makes? Like on thoroughfare roads, we can decide what's a thoroughfare and what's not a thoroughfare. We do it all the time. So I'm trying to figure out, is it just that we can make that determination for ourselves and say, yeah, we need to change this classification of this road now because there might be a commercial node going in, or we need the traffic's picked up on this road, we need better circulation, we need X, Y, and Z. Is that something we can just go to the state and say that we own and the state and we tell the state, or does the state own it and tell us? That's what I'm just trying to determine.
If they're county maintained roads within public right of way, I think we are allowed to do pretty much whatever we want. The state might object if we tried to demote their arterials roads to collectors or something because it's inconsistent with how they're being used.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Clark.
I'll call something else out here. We talked a lot about planning, right? The Planning Commission also has full authority. You bring this up on your own agenda, right? And you don't wait for a development to come to you. And you can discuss and propose amendments as well. This one was staff initiated for the sole, among many other reasons, but the best one being we're trying to align with FDOT's context classification because they're doing it on their roads. It's a much cleaner way to understand what the purpose of a road is, what it's not. Cortez, there's a study going on there right now. So that it's something we're trying to align on. So we're essentially speaking the same language, if you will, as opposed to trying to interpret FDOT's view of a road, our view of a road, and try and plan around that. It's kind of a mess right now. That's something we talk about. We see in the MPO a little bit. Yeah. So it's about aligning, being on the same page as far as what are we calling our roads.
No, I get that. I mean,
no, I wasn't talking to you, sir.
We live in real time.
Oh, yeah.
We live in real time. Sometimes FDOT doesn't.
Yeah.
So that was the gist of my question, is that if we're living in real time, can we change a classification of the road that we needed to change to and not wait for FDOT to give us a blessing or whatever? That was the point of my question.
Oh, agreed. And I just wanted to mention the Planning Commission has the authority to recommend those changes as well. So if you feel that there's a need to change or provide updates within the confines of SB 180 for now until next October, that's something that we would certainly welcome as well. Go ahead, Prony. Oh, sorry, I have Commissioner Prosser on with her hand raised. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sorry, just a quick question. Are we using this 2050 map to proactively shape growth, or is the map being expanded in response to the growth that's already being approved?
You can see we expand the facilities on North County and East County where the growth is expected. It's where we plan to have new facilities. And if you can, I don't know if I can, if you can see that. And the dashed lines is what that are proposed in the future. These and that, okay. And you also have the FDEB line.
This is a question I was asking offline as well, but what data are we using to determine what the future thoroughfare network should be? We had a pretty good conversation about ways we can, the Planning Commission can revise this to be a little bit more hyper-focused, locally focused at our April 8th work session. But you're looking at current allowable density and intensity in the existing future thoroughfare map. You're not looking at, let's say, like, I don't know, 2 months from now, someone says, let's go from 200 allowable units to this particular parcel, which is calculated upon, I'm not going to get into that, to 700. The future thoroughfare plan does not account for that increase in zoning. It only accounts for what's currently entitled for in the future land use code. Is that correct?
Yeah, but that's when if you have with the MPO, we provided to the MPO the model with the long-range transportation planning. Based on that, we have an idea about where the need will be, what type of activities will be in specific area.
Sure.
And based on the growth and to meet this demand, and with the MPO, okay, that's when we decided to think this road will be needed in the specific areas. I think Clark can chime in a little bit more.
What the staff will do at the time of a rezoning is there'll be a short-range study. It's looking at the level of service on the roads today and what's expected about 5 years from now. It's very similar to what Prony was showing you on the link table earlier with the existing plus reserve trips plus trips from the proposed project. One of the reasons for doing that indirectly is to test the goodness of your capital improvement program. Is your 5-year CIP going to help maintain level of service on all the roads impacted by this development? In theory, it will. If it doesn't, we'll try and find a way to build those roads. Sometimes it takes longer than we want it to get there, and those are the things that the board is weighing when you have those kinds of hearings. The comprehensive plan amendment does that same thing. A land use plan amendment will do that same thing, but also look at a long-range estimate and say, is the long-range plan, what you think you'll build eventually, good enough for all the land uses that are here, including the effects of the change that's before you that day? And at that time, it's an opportunity to say, no, maybe this road should be 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes, or maybe we should have another 2-lane connecting road in an area. And it's how you end up with things like the East River Ranch Road addition that Prony was talking about a minute ago, and some of the stuff that was done up near the Gamble Creek plan amendment a few years ago.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Clark. Let's go back to 5C. It's regarding the right of way needed. And now we can see Lena Road is now currently is 84 feet right of way. Lena? This is Lena? Okay, you want to have it 120 feet with the idea to widen it from 2 lane to 4 lane. This is what you are proposing for Lena Road. This segment of Lena Road and also this segment of East River Ranch. And 5D is the same thing as almost concurrent to 5C. 5C is right of way, 5D is number of land. (5E) is about control access facilities. It's what we have now, but we are proposing to add 3 facilities based on the comments you have for the county attorney's office. We cannot add more facilities to the access facilities. That's been the proposed 5E will be the current 5E will be the proposed 5E. It's not going to modify that map. Now we want to add 3 more maps to the county. It's context classification. We talked about that at the beginning. It's based on the road and the land use. We can see C1, for instance, Mayaka, it's more rural. We can expect to be C1. But if you go to down in this area, it will be C5, which means the typical section should match the context classification of the road. C5, you can see you have bike lane, sidewalk, unlike C1. It's based on the need of the land use and the road. Sector 64 may have different typical section based, may have different context classification based on the surrounding area. The same road from down to Mayaka is going to have different typical section based on the land use. But the county is proposing to have quote classification for this road. Based on that, you're going to have these maps. For instance, these maps, some roads will be classified based on the land use. We can see, for instance, C2, most likely 64 in this area. And we have suburban area, suburban residential. We also have urban center based on where the road is located. What you are proposing to the board to add this map to the map 5 series. This is for existing. And also for future classification, it will be the same thing. Some suburban will be urban based on the development that's going to happen in this area in the future. One more map we're proposing to the county, to the board is Manatee County Trail Master Plan. You don't have, we need to have these for dedication of right-of-way. Now, right-of-way is dedicated for the road, not for the trail. We want, when we have any development, we need to require the land, not only for the roads, also for the master plan. Which means you are proposing 2 new maps. We're going from 6 maps to 9 maps.
And to clarify, the trail map is not in the comp plan today, correct?
No.
Okay. Well, that's good that we're actually adding that in there. The only question I had there, and I didn't dive into this particular portion of it, but the east-west connection is a pretty big, if you can go back to the map, actually 5I. It's a pretty big weak point, I would say. And no, you had it. It was further towards the end, right before your question slide. 5I, the trail map. So I understand State Road 64 is a state road. I get the complexity of that, DOT's work, all that. But there's a pretty big gap, I would say, in the middle of the county there, east to west. There's no real connector. I'm just curious, what are the reasons behind that? I mean, we're not talking even funding. We're just talking having lines in a map, essentially. So what are the barriers to that?
Braden River is a big part of it. If you think about how many times we've got roads crossing it, it's not very many. And so we have even fewer trails. It's the way it filled in, it suburbanized at a time when we didn't have a trail plan to preserve some of those rights away. So this tells the, say, major trail part of the story. What we hope someday to do is present something like this that shows you this map superimposed on what we've got on the major roads, the bike and ped facilities that are there. They won't be proper trails, but they'll provide the same non-motorized connectivity that you might need to get from the trails, because it was one of the first things we saw when we looked at this map too. It looks like an upside down U. What goes in that middle? And so we're working on the surface street enhancement part of that to complete the picture.
Okay. And the other reason I asked this is because if we don't see something proposed, then we can't go to the MPO with anything. They can't percolate this up to DOT and see this on our 5-year work plan. So have you encountered resistance to even saying, well, the MPO, we would ask you to consider this line, this connectivity, at least on State Road 64 along that? Because if the whole promise and premise behind the trail network is one day you could go into downtown if you wanted to, and let's think e-bikes, for example, and go 27, 25, 30, I won't say who, but I know someone who's modded their bike so it can go 30 miles an hour. Not going to get them in trouble, but they can go pretty darn fast. And so thinking about that as a future, some people will go on a trail 30 miles an hour in their modded e-bike. So why haven't we proposed something like this to the MPO at least? Because then DOT can look at it from there.
This doesn't box us out of doing something like that, because it would be an enhancement to an existing state highway. It wouldn't be a separate standalone trail. It would be just better bike and pedestrian amenities for those roads. We pretty much focus on the county facilities for things like that, but there's no reason we couldn't take it to the state if that's where we wanted to emphasize our priorities. they face the same issues we do. You know, that it's lots of needs and then a bunch more wants after that, and then up against limited fiscal resources.
Sure. Commissioner Cruz. Okay. If we can go back to...
Actually, I was just saying, just remember the N in Sun Trail. As we're talking about these trail systems, which I've been pushing for years, the N in Sun Trail is for non-motorized. So
Yes.
if we're getting grant money and other forms of money associated with a Sun Trail, we have to be careful with which portions of this are commuter-type trails and which ones are recreational-type trails.
Trying to find the right map. On trail? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, can you go back to 5G? Okay. I see everything east of the West Ave is green, which is rural. Okay. And then on 5H, the next one, the 2050 future, there's suburban residential east of the FDAB. Is there projects or something that are driving that? East. North. All of those have already been approved. So we have, okay.
That's Rye Ranch, isn't it? Rye Ranch, okay. Oh, Rye is inside, okay.
You also have Gumbo Creek here. Gumbo is huge. You already approved these.
Oh, right, Gamble Creek.
Yep.
Okay, that's what that is. I was wondering, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that segment there that's already approved, right? That density is already approved for that east of the F is not, the density for that segment is not approved already for east of the FDAB in that segment. North, go a little bit north there. Yeah, that whole area there.
Yeah, Gumbo Creek.
Well, I'm just saying, Ms. Layton was saying no, so I'm just trying to understand. That density is already approved for.
Rachel, what do you know that we don't?
Zoning was, but no
No,
FSPs
so there's
have
a
come in
future
yet.
land use overlay. It will still need the remaining entitlements. But yes, that's why those roads are shown on there between Rye Road and the edge of the FDAB line and all of those roads out that way.
Yeah, because when we both were looking at it, thank you so much. When we were both looking at that, we were just sort of understanding, well, how do you project out to 2050 beyond the FDAB with these roads that need to be built, which, like Commissioner Cruz said, likely going to be some sort of impact fee credit for the builder to do all those internal roadways that will eventually be ours to maintain. It just wasn't computing for us, that's all.
I had a question along the proposed map. So this is a good example. At the April 8th work session, we had a UF professor focused on land use kind of bring the idea up, and he did that. He brought the idea up at FAC. Something I would throw out there as a suggestion for the Planning Commission and the board. We've already talked about this, right? But you can see a pretty big difference in gap in how the grid looks like in the older parts of the community that predate the various statutes regulating, requiring comprehensive plans, development codes, all those things. And what we're seeing now, which is it's the parcels and developments that are primarily, with some input, right, from our future thoroughfare, that are driving the road networks. And so after October 27, and probably up until then, I think there's a need, just as a suggestion, learn from the urban areas, right, that there are redundancies baked into the network. And so you have a tighter, more narrowly focused grid, because the reason for that is today the system as it's presented is forcing this board and the public to spend a lot of money on arterials and collector roads, which are very expensive. I mean, Lorraine's a great example. $200 million, and most of that's in land acquisition. That's just not going to happen. You couldn't bond for that. That would put my generation and others in debt for forever. And so an alternative solution I would suggest that we start looking at is, can we leverage start to leverage more local roads and collector roads to connect them, and ignoring the existing gated communities, can you all start to look at working with property owners and certainly staff to plan out what a local grid might look like within those blank white spaces so that there are alternative ways to get around? We talked about this at the last meeting. I won't reference a specific development, but Rye Road, for example. Commissioner Cruz said if you stuck on Rye, you're stuck on Rye, which is true. There's no other way to get in or out because all these developments branch off a major thoroughfare. State Road 64, State Road 70, Rye, Buckeye, a few others there. But there's no way to get around within these developments to other roads to escape. I've got probably half a dozen different ways to get to downtown if something happens on Manatee Avenue. You don't have that. You're out of luck if you're in those parts of town. So the suggestion from the land use attorneys, and it's just general from conversation, it's generally just good feedback I've collected from our staff is we should collectively be looking at superimposing call it a microgrid in between those, and as developments come up, they can build out those local networks, if you will. Yes, that means they're not going to have their cute little gated cul-de-sacs, but it also means we're not spending hundreds of millions on major collectors and arterials to circulate traffic. They can work out the development pattern. A good example of something like this is Seaflower in my district. And so they got their approvals 10 plus years ago. They built out a little mini grid so that there's multiple ways to internally circulate traffic within the community. And of course, they made improvements on 75th Street West. But the point being, they're not just one long, spindly little community of cul-de-sacs. They have a little microgrid. There's multiple ways to get to Cortez, 86th, 75th, and eventually the rest, other parts of Elcon. That's something I think the Planning Commission and this board, but I think the Planning Commission should really look at and just plan for that. And when a development comes up, if it does, you can always modify that. But today we have no mini grid, if you will, in between the larger future thoroughfares. And that's forcing us to spend hundreds of millions on pretty expensive roads. So don't think that you don't have the authority to do that. You can work with, you can request staff help. You can't direct them, we can. But I would say really look at and pay attention to trying to develop a better grid so that people can have relief from these major thoroughfares that they're currently stuck on. Commissioner Shula.
I had a question that actually this ties right into what you're saying. So if I'm looking at 5G, the proposed map, and then 5H, and you're talking about a grid, I hate to come back to this, but I mean, you want to go to all of those east-west connectors there, west of the FDAB that sort of surround the Manatee River as it heads up. You want them to be 3C roads, and the central artery, Mulholland Road, that you want to go to 3C in 2050 still doesn't have a bridge on it. So, like, you want me to come up with another grid when the grid you have is incomplete? Like, this is an incomplete grid. You can't expand it, and you're projecting out to 2050. There's still a break in there. I mean, so thinking about that, right? I can't come up with a more pie in the sky grid scenario if the central grid scenario is not satisfactory. But I wanted to ask, so what formula or methodology do you use to balance trip quantity on the new or future roads? For example, in the east-west trips, like on 44th, they're anticipated to increase by X amount of trips, thus reducing east-west trips on another. How does that work? How do you look at the new road that's there and start and say, okay, well, we're going to see fewer east-west trips here. So 44 is going to take some of this density, and I'm trying to apply that to all the east-west roads in that corridor. So Golf Course Road, County Road 675, again, all getting heavy density residential as we speak, and then the incomplete Mulholland. What methodology do you use to balance that out? How do you estimate the traffic patterns changing on the wider road that you have?
This is the goal of long-range transportation planning. is to plan in the future, okay, what should be needed. 44th was designed and built with the idea to relieve traffic from 64 to 70. And we can see the data, and the growth in the traffic on 44th is about over 200% in the last year. And we can expect an decrease in traffic on 64 and 70. And it will be the same thing for Morgan Johnson as well. And if you see the traffic volume on the segment on Lakewood Ranch, some eastward segment, we have seen the traffic volume decrease. At the same time, you have seen some increase in traffic volume on Lakewood Ranch, the segment from 64 to 44th, because so many trips they try to avoid with the segment that everyone tried to go to 44th Avenue East. The bill of the grid segment is to provide more ways for people to get around.
Yeah, so I understand. I understand what's happening on 44th, and you're seeing data now that's proving that out. But I'm asking, again, looking at the east-west connectors there, and as was just explained, that northeast quadrant is already getting, already approved for more density. There's projects already in place that are happening. Your east-west there on 675.
You here?
Yeah, I mean, you have density to your right, just north of where you are. But you have all this density. You're going to put all those folks on an incomplete 675. And then I would think that I would want to know how.
You're talking about incomplete 675. 675 is built up to here.
Exactly, but it still brings traffic to, that road is still going to convey traffic to the west, to 75 and those sort of things. But all of those east-west connectors, including the 675 connector there, in 2050, you expect them to be 3C roads, but one of your central ones, Mulholland, is not complete. And that is what I see as the central road that's going to come off of all that development to the east.
I know we cannot.
So that's how do you project what load or what reduction you're going to have on 675 to those other three?
Excuse me, Clark.
Commissioner, when Mulholland got changed, that wasn't a staff decision. I just want to make sure you understand that. That was a decision by the board, not staff.
I know.
But we cannot put it.
And I'm not harping on you for not doing Mulholland Road. I'm just saying how you're projecting in 2050 these roads. What's your balance? What's your ratio per east-west connector projected to? Like, how much are you going to reduce 675 for golf course? How much are you going to reduce whatever the next one down here is? How are you going to reduce the Upper Manatee Road congestion? How's that going to balance?
But all of them, not forget, all of them are four-lane facilities. That's been, if you look at, let's go back to let's go to the
5D was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, because Commissioner Sadiq was talking about the east-west, and you got to see how it's going to balance.
All these will be four-lane, six-lane, based on the growth in this area. We cannot connect this segment until the board decide to have it connected.
I understand. I'm asking really, how do you come up with what is the methodology to determine how many trips you're going to generate in this area and how it's going to be distributed between all of those east-west, 675, golf course, Upper Manatee? It's all moving that way, right? Because everybody's got to get to the interstate, right? Or you think that's the way that they're going. I don't know how that all balances. So
it's based on the long-range transportation planning, the way we win the model. Okay, that's been, if you assume all this will be built based on the different land uses, the model can give you an idea about where people will be going. Where the service will be, if you look at, for instance, Moccasin Wallow, because of the hospital to be built here, we can expect we're going to have some people going in this area because people have to go where the service will be. Residential, they have to go to where the service will be. Commercial, you have to go where the service will be. You have residential also where it was sometimes better to have mixed use that the troop will be and then will stay in the area instead of going farther, north or south.
Yeah. So
This is a long
these
story.
plans wait, knowing that there's already density on these east-west corridors. Rye Road, like Commissioner Cruz had mentioned, if Mulholland was complete, there'd be a way to get off of Rye Road there. This density is already exists. So these east-west corridors, if you're saying, hey, in 2050 they'll be there, that's not going to help. I mean, that's a long way off.
Yeah, but don't forget some of the project they already approved. They are just waiting for the CO or COCs, but all of them some of them already approved. That means even the board doesn't approve any new project, they will be built anyway.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, this is kind of my point, right? The Mulholland isn't going to be a silver bullet to solve it, right? One could draw a line to Waterline, and we're going to see the Waterline Preservation Group show up saying, we don't want that connection here. So guarantee you that's going to happen. So, I know you said that like the central grid's failing. It's not failing. We also, what's not happening, and this needs to happen, and again, Planning Commission and the board, we need to start looking at other ways to connect these major thoroughfares. We can't just infinitely build these larger road networks and assume they'll work, because you still have, what you end up seeing are large parcels developed, bought, combined, and developed, and they're still leveraging 1, 2, at best, maybe 3 if you're lucky, major roads to empty out traffic. They're not contributing internally within their parcels to a grid that can offload capacity. You see that big empty white space within Rye. Let's pretend there's nothing there, right? There are at least 4 different, maybe 5, I see 6 there. Let's just say 4 ways if there was a grid developed within that for that traffic to empty out. Now you wouldn't have to spend money on Rye Road. Now you just have the developer through LDAs or through their own, not even LDAs, but through their own circulation, through their own through their own process as they're building at an FSP. They build out the grid that we have told them they need to build as a condition of development, so that we don't need to spend money on Rye Road. They build the internal grid to circulate and empty out traffic onto surrounding roads. Maybe you skip Waterline so we don't see Waterline Preservation Group show up. And that right there solves a meaningful portion of the problem, where maybe, I don't know, let's just pretend there's 2,000 units of development within that empty space. Now they're not all just dumping out into Rye because that's the only exit point. Now they're emptying out into surrounding streets. That's the general mentality I think we need to evaluate. Maybe it's perfect, maybe it's not. But that way we're not spending money and widening, at least on this, it says Rye 4. We don't have to spend more money in, 2070, widening that to 6 lanes. We just focus on the grid within that white space so that traffic doesn't need to empty out into Rye only.
Commissioner, this development, they also have local roads. These roads are not shown on this map, because the map shows we have only major roads. They also have internal local roads as well. But the issue is, if you want to downgrade the thoroughfare to local, the typical sections are not the same. The traffic volume will be, that means if you go from thoroughfare to local road, the traffic volume is going to be the same. That is going to have more congested road because you downgrade the capacity of the road.
Any questions on this one? Okay. Clark, was that, I think we can go to your presentation, right, on the CIP? Thank you, Brony. I appreciate it.
Good morning. For the record, my name's Clark Davis. I'm Deputy Director of Traffic Management for Public Works Department. I'm just going to go over the capital improvement program in general at first, and then drill down a little bit into what we're looking at in transportation today and how we hope to improve it, not just for transportation, but other facility types in the future. For grounding, I think everybody knows this, but just to be clear, our capital improvement program is a 5-year schedule of infrastructure projects. The buildings, the roads, the stormwater and potable water and wastewater systems for the county. It consists of a 1-year budget, the board's authority to appropriate funds to individual project accounts, and then a 4-year plan of appropriation, so how we're going to do it over the next 4 years. And it's a rolling block, so this year's budget becomes a prior year, this year's year 2 becomes the next budget year, and so on, and you get a new year tacked on the end at every year as it rolls forward. Capital improvements are relatively high cost improvements. They're for assets that have an expected life of 5 years or more. And then the capital expenditures are all the costs incurred to put a capital asset into service. And that sounds simplistic, but it helps to put the CIP in perspective. Somebody could look at the CIP and say, Buckeye Road is funded. Well, that's not a lie, but it's just some funding for some preliminary engineering. It doesn't take into account final design, right-of-way, and construction. So it is a capital expenditure on an early planning step, but it's not fully funded. We don't have a full funding plan in place yet for that project, and so that's why that distinction is important as you look through our CIP online. Why we have it, one way to look at our comprehensive plan is as a growth template. It's got a land use plan that tells us what the arrangement of existing land uses and allowable future land uses are in the county. Each of the infrastructure plans, transportation's one of them, has a plan that is supposed to be what is required to serve those land uses. We focus on the major roads, not the local roads. We can talk more about that later, but the local road fabric is really built by the developers as they come in and do it. And there are rules in the Land Development Code about how they do that, but for the most part, we're focused on the major road, a connected grid of roads that will serve the trips, not just to local access, but to get from origins to destinations. And the responsibility of the county is to achieve and maintain adopted level of service on those facilities. So the capital improvement element ties together the land uses with the infrastructure plans themselves and basically guides how you build it. So it has a policy I'll go over in a second about how that works, and then a tabulation of the funded improvements every year. We're also supposed to identify our unfunded needs. If we're supposed to achieve and maintain level of service, our CIP does as much as it can. What do you do with what's left over? We have a list of those roads that are operating below adopted level of service and have a rough idea of the priority of those so that we can use that to inform future updates when we can afford them. So the capital improvement program includes projects to maintain structural sufficiency, take care of what you've already got, make sure what you have doesn't fall apart, comply with functional standards. Those change over time. What is important to have on a road? When Moccasin Wallow Road was just surrounded by farmland, maybe it was fine for it to just be a 2-lane road. But as it got busier, the suburban development fills in, you want to start maybe adding capacity, but even if you don't add capacity, you want to start having non-motorized vehicle capabilities. You can reasonably expect bicyclists and pedestrians from time to time on a road like that. So it needed to change. The standard needed to change, and this is part of what's behind Prony's recommendation for context class. As the road evolves over time, how we think about how that road should be built. And then finally, we do provide capacity. But the comp plan says take care of what you got first, and that comes from policy 10.1.2.1. This isn't that policy verbatim, but it's the spirit of it. It basically says we need to prioritize our improvements in 3 tiers. Take care of the stuff that's wearing out first, correct existing deficiencies. Deficiencies can be those structural things, but in this context, it's really talking about level of service. So tackle your existing level of service problems, and then finally be proactive and start solving the ones before they occur. There's flexibility to adjust that. I'll talk about that in a second when we talk about the money part of it. And then each department, because road needs are different than utility needs, has some ability to structure their prioritization methods as they need to. So fiscal considerations, as we work on our CIP, we're looking at funding. There's carry forward amounts, whatever's left over from last year brought into this year. There's revenue estimates for what we expect to come in. And then for those revenues, there's limitations. Infrastructure surtax, straight out of statutes, we can spend it on infrastructure generally. But if you look at our ordinance and then our resolution, we have told the electorate that we're going to spend the funds a particular way. We're going to put a big chunk towards transportation, some towards law enforcement, and some towards parks and natural resources, and then a list of projects for those. Impact fees has to be for new growth, and where applicable, it has to be spent in the benefit district. This can affect building stuff out of order. I said we stress taking care of what we got first, but sometimes we build roads with impact fees proactively because it makes sense. We've got the impact fees to do it. It's not already committed to something else. And then finally, there's program-specific funds. Transportation has fuel taxes, utilities have rates, and so on. So they have to be spent in the areas where they're collected. And then finally, we do have some bonds issued, and there's, in setting up the program, there is a goal to spend down those bonds each year. So what is the CIP process? This is what we're doing each year as we update the CIP. I've put what you could call the process owners here on the left side of each of these bullets. There is no single project management department. This is the project management portion of several departments. For example, in Public Works, we build a lot of the roads, stormwater, and a good chunk of the water and wastewater system. Utilities builds more of the another part of the wastewater system, and then property management builds a lot of our buildings and park improvements. So it starts with the PM departments, the project managers, looking at our mid-range needs. So if we've got a 5-year program, looking out at that 6 to 10 window, what needs to roll in over time to establish those needs, pick candidate projects from it, prioritize them, then work with fiscal management for what I've called financial framing here. This is making sure that your scopes, your schedules, and your costs are correct, and that you've got good revenue information. This is an area where we think on the project management side we can improve. Then there's the annual CIP roll. That's that roll forward that I was talking about. Then you get a draft CIP that the board will see typically once at least in the spring, and then again over the after the summer break, and then you'll see it for hearings in September. And then after that, it's all on the project management side of things to implement those projects. So I won't go over this. I've already talked about a lot of it, but the needs to prioritize candidates is looking at the different tools we have to gauge essentially the condition of existing infrastructure, or whether or not we need to add infrastructure, add new infrastructure over time. Some transportation examples of the type of data we can use for the CIP. First, talk about the projects. So in addition to structure, function, capacity, there's a safety consideration always. We do have some crash history data. For the structural condition for us, it's about the condition of pavement and bridges and stormwater structures. The functional adequacy is about whether or not there's bike lanes and sidewalks typically. And then finally, the capacity is usually about the number of lanes the road has. While the bikes and peds are important, we tend not to see bike and ped capacity issues like you might in a very intense downtown setting. For safety examples, we have other types of data, but one of the things we have, for example, are the intersection crash rates. This data is a couple years old, but based on 2023 data, the larger and more red or darker the dot is, the higher the crash rate is at that location. Smaller and lighter colors are lower ones, but these are all controlled intersections that have some level of crashes. We can break it down further by vehicles and non-motorized people involved in vehicles, non-motorized mode or vehicular mode involved in the crash, or the severity, whether it's a killed or serious injury crash versus just a minor fender bender. Did not have a structural map for pavement. So I put up the pavement program. So we do have a pavement management system that informs how we schedule our resurfacing projects. This is an example of the resurfacing schedule that you can find online. It shows which roads we plan to resurface over the life of the current capital improvement program. This is a rough plan. It can get adjusted a year or two here and there, depending on how the contracts are coming in.
Clark, I have a question for you here.
Yes, sir.
So I know that we're currently, 75% the way through for the resurface scans, call it. Is there a plan to bring this back, bring the results of that back? Because I've seen them. It's a heat map throughout the whole county. Not all of the local roads, but I would say confidently arterials, collectors, probably some locals in there too. Is there a plan to bring that back and present that to the board? Because that is a part of our transportation system, showing that we can sustain and maintain the
I believe there is. Mr. Butzo came to the podium in the back there and may have something to add.
Okay.
Sir, we can absolutely bring that back. The where we're at right now with the collection of data being focused on, we're just doing mostly business as we normally do. So you get much more data on thoroughfares, the neighborhood roads. You get a too few of our vehicles that are just driving for the purposes of collecting data. So we will cover thoroughfares many more times than we do there. We're getting ready for our 90-day in-brief from where the data collection and the vendor tells us, here you are, here's your keys, this is how you're doing it, and we're still expanding it as far as the number of vehicles. We've got it installed on roughly 36 vehicles. In the end, we'll have it on 100 plus. So we could call it late summer in the August, September range. We could certainly show you at least what we got. It will show the vast number. I would be skeptical that we would cover one of everything by that date without that focus on just doing it. But we can show where it's at. The benefit that we're looking to do for the people, it will also show us a rate of decay, because instead of only seeing a score once every 5 years, you get scores at minimum per se once a year or more often than that. That's where we're trying to get to. What's the change year over year?
I think that data is going to be very important to see. So thank you for the update. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chad, we have what, over 1,500 miles of road in Manatee County that we maintain?
That's a good round number. I don't know it right off the top of my head. It's 15, 16.
For the citizens' benefit, we every commissioner here gets a phone call or email about, I need my road redone. I need my road repaved. We got about, what, $7 million in that fund to go out and repave roads?
This year, we did get an increase in our annual budget for general resurfacing. So just general resurfacing. We very focused on trying to do the minimum mill out an inch, mill out 1.5 inches, mill out 2 inches, put it back. Yeah. That's the purpose of that program. Yes, sir. That was the annual budget. For years and years, it was roughly 4.2. We hope we can sustain that. The issue that we love with the expansion of the budget, and I'll just put my other harp in there, it's just chipping away at the cost increases. So if anything, we're treading water with what we've lost since price increases since the COVID recovery.
So I see our repaving plan, what we're calling it. So we need to expand the plan. I mean, we have major thoroughfares. I know in my district, which has some of the probably older roads that are out there, that we did Lockwood Ridge a couple of years ago. We have other major thoroughfares that we need to get redone. So are we going to transfer those type of projects into the CIP to get done, or how do we move forward on getting those major thoroughfare redone? I think everybody would love to have their street redone in their neighborhood, resurfaced or retopped, or however you want to re-blacktop it, or however you want to do it. But are we going to move the major thoroughfares that need to be resurfaced or remilled or whatever? Going to move those into CIP? Is that the plan?
That is generally the plan. I wish I had my list in front of me, sir, that project requests in for the CIP do include major things, because any length of a major thoroughfare that needs to get done, because it may be 4 lanes or exceptionally long, will use a high percentage of the budget. So if anything that's a project that per se would use 25% or more of an annual budget of the resurfacing program, we propose it as a CIP project.
Yeah, I just want the citizens to understand that we don't have unlimited funds to come out and top every every street, every 1,500 miles of road in Manatee County, and we do try to put a plan together to get to those neighborhoods and do what. But my concern is the major thoroughfares. There'll be the major traffic on.
And hopefully the public sees that. Sometimes they don't. They move the vast majority of the traffic. If you would say typically we'll take better care of the thoroughfares, maybe they get resurfaced or maintained in a 20-year cycle, where a residential road is much closer in a 30 or 30-year plus cycle.
Thank you, Chad.
Commissioner Ballard.
So I think that the idea to move some of the resurfacing of thoroughfares into the CIP is a smart way to do it, but we do need to make some additional progress with the neighborhood roads. And I know that in Commissioner Sadiq's district, in my district, and Commissioner Ron's district, we do have a lot of these older roads, and it's a constant refrain from our citizens who have deteriorating roads, want and need to see them improved. What kind of budget for resurfacing yearly do you think is going to keep us from treading water and actually get us a little further ahead? 10 million, 15 million?
Boy,
Be honest.
Well, if Phil would text me like instantly right now, what's coming to mind is a nice round number of 12 would be something that you go consistent. But the hard pill to swallow is that still takes however much money we dabble in the CIP projects to also not go away. So we've done the Lockwood, we've done the South 75th, we've done the Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. That was a massive job, but we got it done all in 1 year from 70 to University, all 4 lanes. It's beautiful, and but that was a $10+ million job. So we do need still those large infusions of cash. One of them that I know is out there, I forget which year it's funded in, is like Port Harbor Parkway, the main cutaway from Upper Manatee to try to avoid some of that old road. It needs rebased. So it's one of those that's out there to go full depth and rebuild it, and it'll last another 30+ years, even though it doesn't seem that old, but it's in that 25+ year age range here. They have their favorites, and they know which ones on every Friday to check whether they've got a service request or not before the weekend.
Yeah, and I'll say this on the resurfacing. I looked at Sarasota County. Their budgets are recurring $15 million annual. That's excluding the CIP. So I started this year in this room saying we need to at least get to 10 million. Now I'm hearing that that's just maintaining what we have, which is terrible. Prior boards in the county, I don't want to blame anyone, but hundreds of millions have been put towards new road construction. And in the same vein, we've all said we need to see more development in the urban areas, but the road investment, as you can clearly see on this map, has not been there. If you want to see increased density, if you want to see more housing, and you don't want to see that elsewhere, you need to have the road network to support it. We all get it. This is for the public, but for the Planning Commission too, because some folks are new. That means we're not going to be spending a lot of money on things like Lorraine and others. That's just the reality, and I'm not supporting things like that unless we start to see the impact fee lawsuit settle and we get to collect the new fees. Maybe we can have conversations about building all these nice, big, beautiful roads. Or maybe the federal government wants to bless us with more money in the future. But the reality is we know we can't maintain the new roads because we can't maintain the existing roads. And so Lakewood Ranch in 20, 30 years, they're fine to have a stewardship district. A lot of CDDs, North County has a lot of that as well, CDDs and stewardship district, but most places don't. We're liable for those roads. And so my message coming into this budget cycle and every future one is always going to be to prioritize the folks that are here already in their road networks, especially as we work to revitalize and redevelop. We're going to need better roads, bike ped facilities. Those will all facilitate not just the cars, but the bus transit, and of course the commercial vehicles that still use major roads and thoroughfares like 41 and get off 41, 9th, Cortez isn't county, but a lot of people like to go in between the roads to get to county, to Cortez and so on. There's a lot of local roads that are affected from the commercial traffic and need to be resurfaced. So all that to say, I'm just for the Planning Commission's awareness, it's not cheap building new roads because we're also just not maintaining the existing roads. But my priority, and I think a lot of what this board has said, is the pendulum needs to shift back to maintaining and proving to voters that we can sustain the existing network. Otherwise, we look like Sarasota County and other counties, but Sarasota in particular, with $1.77 billion in liabilities, and they have no way to catch up to that with $15 million a year on resurfacing. So just food for thought. Go ahead, Clark. Thank you.
Thank you. So this was stepping through some of the different things we think about for the components of ranking roads, starting with safety. This is part of the structural. There's analogs in bridges and stormwater systems. For functional examples, one of the things we look at are the sidewalk gaps. So this is a couple years old, so maybe some of the, for example, the Moccasin Wallow road problem has been mostly solved, but every one of these roads either is missing a sidewalk on one side of the road or the other, or both, rather. And so these are all thoroughfares, and thoroughfares are supposed to have sidewalks on both sides of the street. So we can look at this map and judge where it makes the most sense to propose sidewalks with other improvements when we come in that area, or multi-use paths on those same roads. Finally, I've got a couple of slides talking about the capacity side of things. There's a reason for this. We have policy that says transportation infrastructure needs to be multimodal, needs to be for all users, and so that we support motorized and non-motorized alike. But our adopted level of service is a roadway adopted level of service, and our requirement is to try to achieve and maintain adopted level of service on those roads. So Public Works uses the link sheet the Development Services maintains, and this is a different spin on the same table that Prony had up earlier, but it shows the peak hour volume, so the count on the road today. It shows the peak hour reserved trips. Those are the trips that are in the capacity reservation system, so from approved but not yet built development. So it's what's coming. Doesn't know exactly when, but it knows that it should be on the way. And when you combine those, you get what I'm calling an emerging total volume, meaning this is the direction we're headed based on what we've got right now. Then there's what I call in quotes a capacity. It's the service volume at level of service D for most of these roads. So it's the tipping point before you go from D to E. And then finally, ratios of those. Instead of the Prony showed it with the difference between the two, but the ratios give me a percent that it's under or over capacity. That's a little bit easier for us to think about when we're programming projects. And based on this, either right now or when all of the reserved trips get here, we've got about 100 different road segments that are headed towards having a level of service problem. This doesn't speak to the severity of that problem or how long each of those segments are, but it's 100 road segments out of 400 or so that are on our list. If you drill in a little or focus a little bit tighter and just look at the county roads, just under 50 of them are on county road facilities. Here, a lot of the problem is emerging, not existing. There aren't as many existing level of service problems. On this map, or not map, on these charts, the reason for the highlights is if a road is below a ratio of 1, meaning there's still some capacity left over, it's not highlighted at all. If it's between 1 and 1.2, it's over, but in that territory, we think we can solve the problem with bigger intersections. So in other words, we can get another 20% or so out of the road if we build the intersections big enough. And then finally, when you get well above 1.2, it's becoming so severe that you need to widen that road, and those are the ones that are highlighted in red. And so taking that thought into the worst right now are these roads. So we've got a section of Rye Road that's actually just shown up in the most recent analysis that we've done. Don't remember it being in last year's list, is that section of Rye, and we've heard public comment on it from State Road 64 up to Waterline Road. It's real congested there just north of the roundabout, and it's starting to show up on the list that way. And then, of course, we've still got some reserve trips that'll land on it later and make it worse. So this is a road that staff would say put together a business case, at least, for the CIP. It might not make it in just yet, but that one would be an important one. We've got two pieces of University Parkway. They essentially, the parts on either side of the interchange down there at University Town Center. So it runs from Honore on the west side to the Town Center Parkway, or at least Market Street on the east side. That's constrained. We have no plan to put more lanes there, so it's just a problem we'll end up living with and maybe need to adopt a lower level of service. And then University Parkway from Lorraine to Bourneside is showing up pretty busy on the map, but Schrader Manatee Ranch is in the process of widening that now. But these kinds of hot spots, the ones that have a problem today or emerging problem today or impending problem today and definitely one in the future, are the ones that we would normally bring forward to the board as a priority in some form or fashion. You might not hear us say those literal words, but there will be business cases prepared and something queued up for consideration for addition to the CIP.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
And is this your last slide? I'll let you finish your last slide.
Okay. So looking ahead, we want to do better with this process. I've showed you a bunch of the data that we have. We don't always show it to the board, or if we do, it's in a haphazard fashion. And so we want to get better at refreshing the CIP data so that the, say, truing up of the program we've already got is a little bit tighter. We do a better job with the identification and prioritization, make it a little bit more visible to the board and the public. And we want to start doing that this year, which means it won't be for the CIP you adopt this September, but it'll be the stuff that we do that informs the next one. So later this fall, put up the schedule. So this summer, staff would be working, doing that project management side of it, of refreshing the project information. This fall, right after you adopt the CIP, have a meeting with the board where we can talk about what just got approved and what that means looking forward. And then finally go through the rest of this in hopefully some other public meetings or in the regularly scheduled work sessions, go through what staff considered in putting together the program and priorities for you to consider for additions to the CIP. And that's it.
Yeah, this is more of a statement. I appreciate this because you're using facts. And I think it's important because if you put together everything we're talking about today, we're talking about the limited money we have to fix things. We're talking about how to best flow traffic around the community. And we're talking about the future needs for maintenance on these things, meaning not every single road needs to be a 6-lane road with 2 10-foot sidewalks that we have to maintain endlessly. You have to focus on induced demand. You have to focus on pinch points. You have to focus on knowing that people are going to move from one road to another road if they're smart to find the path of least resistance, and not every road has to be the path of least resistance. So I'm looking at all these sheets from Prony and the updated presentation that we just saw. These are the roads some of us have talked about. Rye, Fort Hammer, Buckeye, Moccasin Wallow, Elcon. Why? Because there's no other place to go. There's literally no other place to go. And then, you can't get off. If you get off Rye, you're taking from 2-lane Rye to a 2-lane golf course. And even if you build the bridge, a 2-lane Mulholland. And to get to a 2-lane Fort Hammer, which is another problem road, you're not solving it. You go the other direction, you're going to a 2-lane 675 once they put something through Rye Ranch. That is a pinch point that doesn't have a solvable solution. You can't point to the people waiting in line with their kids for school and say, why didn't you just go over to that road? There is no other that road. We hear it's become this hot button thing, not to harp on it, but I will, because the information's in front of us, that Lorraine needs to be done. You can get off Lorraine with a 4-lane rangeland, a 4-lane 44th. You can go to a 4-lane White Eagle, or you can go to a 4-lane Lakewood Ranch, or you can go to a 4-lane Uline, or you can go to 4-lane Bourneside. There's alternatives to that. In fact, if you look at every single chart we saw today, guess what road is not on there? Lorraine, anywhere, nowhere, in any way, shape, or form, not even in a hypothetical future situation. In fact, no road in Lakewood Ranch is on there. Why? Because Lakewood Ranch was built with the grid that the chairman said is how we need to focus on it. There's east-west and north-south ways of taking these things. You got state roads and you've got county roads. That system is built properly. Is there windows of time when school's backing up during peak hours of drive that it's going to be a little congested? Sure, that's how it is in literally every town, every place in the entire world. That's how traffic works. As long as everyone starts work at 9 and leaves work at 5 and every school starts at the same time and every bus is on, there's going to be times where traffic is slightly slower. That's just fact. But, we need to be focusing on these roads. Rye and Fort Hammer, I think, are the only two roads we should be talking about right now, because Moccasin is already doing what it's doing, and Buckeye's going to need support from the state or federal. There's no way we could possibly do it ourselves. But we can locally handle those other two roads. That's manageable. We're going to have to put some level of effort either through impact fee credits or money we have. The Ellicon 75th and 51st kind of area, because Seaflower and all the development out there is going to cause problems out there. But we need to be focused. Instead, I feel like we're just sprinkling stuff around. We need to be focusing on because we didn't talk about it here today, other than the one slide on sidewalks. We need to be talking about sidewalks. We need to be talking about intersection improvements. We need to be talking about things that are more cost effective and require less future maintenance, so we can refocus the dollars we do have on the big projects. And we need to figure out what those big projects are and do them, instead of every 2 years somebody else has a new idea of what their version of a new project is. And then all of a sudden we start over again. And that's why it took from 2021 bonding till a few months ago before we really got started on Upper Manatee. And we're still dealing with some of these other roads. There needs to be an effort. And that's how 44th happened. And that's why 44th is one of the best things we've opened in a long, long time here, because people actually had a focus and said, let's take all of our money, all of our focus, all of our attention and build something necessary to improve everyone's lives. And ultimately they did, and it did. I think we need to be doing that with roads like Rye and Fort Hammer, and focusing our attention on these pinch points. And maybe there's a few others, but all these people that just want the next nice thing and wants more Royal Palms in the next landscape median in stewardship districts is losing focus on what's actually important for the greater community and for the greater traffic flow for everybody.
I'm up, Commissioner, and then Commissioner Shulo, and then I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but I am watching you all, so feel free to jump in there. I'll plus one to the data-driven approach. I think we're getting there, but not every decision has been made with that in mind. So we had to sit down, staff and I looked at 75th through 43rd and asked for traffic counts. And I was quite surprised to see that, with some exceptions, virtually not much had changed. I guess I shouldn't be surprised when I think about it, because there's not any new development there except for Seaflower, which isn't online yet. We're seeing all the data. We're seeing what are the pinch points, what are some potential options. I know we talked a lot about funding, but I would say for the Planning Commission, and it's important to contextualize this, right? Yes, you should be aware of the budget, just like LMAC, be aware of what funds are left, what to bond with or not with, but we still need to focus. And I think with the conversation going from Mulholland to Lorraine to, we have a limited number of dollars. I'll just leave it at that. And so one of the things that I think the public, our boards, would definitely benefit from is, one, that focus, but two, focusing on what the solution should be for those areas. So in your follow-up meetings and conversations, what would be whether it's map amendments, maybe the grids are great, maybe they're terrible, but what are the next steps? And I think that's something I'd like to hear. We can talk budget certainly after the fact to see whether we can align the funding with the plans that you're putting together. But one of the things that I see is we just don't see much of a modification to the plan. And I'm not discounting what has been put together, but I do think we need to have some solutions for Fort Hammer, Rye, a lot of the 2-lane roads that empty out into other 2-lane roads and constrained roads throughout the community. And I'll also do a plus one for the data that we're seeing in the capacity sheet here. We've championed there's a great page in the CIP website. It's the Traffic Safety Improvement Program. And so in places where we can't necessarily fund an expansion of a roadway to 6 or 4 lanes, maybe it doesn't make sense. That's a great way we've been able to work on intersections, on small projects that aren't necessarily worthy of a CIP. They're not hitting a dollar amount threshold, but they've been able to make a massive difference. I've seen two people, two in my district, two roundabouts that have made a difference, but we've also put raised intersections at Morgan Johnson. There's quite a few sprinkled throughout the county. I'm blanking on a few of them, but even the functional improvements are making a massive difference for less than $300,000, depending on the project. So I wouldn't discount, and for the public who are watching, I wouldn't discount the fact that we're not focusing on an expansion. I would focus on what are the safety improvements that we're making, because we're not ignoring those, whether it's full-on studies like Elcon or even RYE, where we're looking at intersections to find safety improvements to reduce the behavior incentive to want to just race down a straight road to wanting to move around a roundabout or a raised intersection. There's smarter ways that we can address some of the concerns there. But again, let's just make sure that the decisions are data oriented and not just based on perception, because we need to be able to, because we're allocating real dollars behind these projects, and we need to show the data supports that. Commissioner Shulo, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, you're right. I was more thinking of implementation plans, not necessarily future plans earlier when I was talking about like some of these things, right? Like, there's a big difference between what your implementation plan is and what your future planning is. So I agree, and I understand, hey, you want us to look at that. But, in simple form, I would say for an implementation plan to be achieve your 2025 objectives that you already have laid out here. That would be my implementation plan at a 25% per year rate. That's what I would consider, like implement at that rate for an implementation plan. Now, future plans, I just really wanted to footstop something you said, Mr. Chair, earlier, and then Commissioner Cruz also talked about. With all that stuff being said about these roads and certain roads, project denials is not illegal. And starting or stating a project is not consistent with the comprehensive plan because physically, the timing is not acceptable. I hope that everybody remembers that. I think you guys are doing that in certain areas, certain projects. You're saying no because this particular topic proves it out. It proves it out that it is not consistent with the comprehensive plan to have more density with less infrastructure. So if you want to know what the focus, Commissioner Cruz, would be, I hope we focus our attention on catching up. Otherwise, our plan for the future is moot.
Commissioner Cruz.
Sure, and I don't disagree, and I think we have, to your point. We just had one up in North County that was denied as a result of it. However, that only works if it works. Like if you're using it as a fallback, as an excuse to vote no on everything based upon some like backdoor moratorium and just going to point to every road, well, I will again use the same analysis I just used, or the same example I just used. No place on this presentation does it say Lorain Road is a problem. No place in our LOS does it say Lorain's a problem. Every single time a project has come up on Lorain, guess what people have said is a problem, including a high school, mind you. That for school, to ease capacity of another high school that's 125% capacity, the excuse was Lorain, infrastructure. Well, I get what you're saying. So if there's going to be some either formal or informal threshold of the future LOS is beyond this, or this 1.2 metric is beyond this, therefore that triggers something in a comp plan where maybe we should consider it, then you also have to say if it doesn't trigger that, then that should no longer be on the table as an excuse per se, because you're claiming I'm going to decline things because there's inadequate infrastructure, but therefore if there is adequate infrastructure and it's west of the FDAB, which is the line that says if you're building west that there should be consideration. So it needs to go both ways though. Because there are things, again, like grocery stores, like daycare centers, like high schools, like baseball fields, like affordable housing that does need to be provided in locations. And the way growth management works is to say, this is stuff we need. Now let's manage where that growth is going to go. And managing where it's going to go does not just mean using a fallback excuse to make sure it goes no place.
Yes, sir. Completely. And also just remember, though, that the timing and the denials aren't forever either, like we have referenced. If the denial is because it's not adequate at the present, doesn't mean these folks can't come back for it. And that's why I really appreciate that there are denials happening for this specific reason, so we can plan ahead. But yeah, as you mentioned, some places, hey, it's good. You gotta go with the project. But slowing them down and denying doesn't mean it's gone forever. I've heard all of you sort of say that. Like, doesn't mean you can't bring this project back to us at another time once we have completed this roadway improvement, or once we have completed a more thorough analysis of how that's going to impact the rest of the community. So there was all that talk about these roads and how imperative they are and how this is straining. You know, we gotta keep restricting what we take on our plate. So thanks.
All right, I think that's it for the staff presentation. Okay. Anyone on the phones, any comments or final thoughts? All right, I'll open up to public comment on any topic today. Please come up, state your name, county of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Oh. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Matthew Monroe, a Manatee County resident. Just had a couple comments, mostly about the first part about transportation planning. First of all, as we said, LOS is a terrible way of grading a road. And similarly, I think functional classification is also not a very good way of grading a road for similar reasons. Thankfully, we're moving towards context classification, which is a lot better, and it's a step in the right direction. But, I mean, if we obsess ourselves with functional classification, then you end up with situations where, like, you know, if you obsess over the functional classification and the LOS, then we end up having to widen 59th Street to 4 lanes, and I think we all remember how that went. Really, I think the best way to look at a road is to think about the purpose of the road and the area where it is. Is it meant to be a road, which is moving people from place to place, or is it meant to be a street, which is about, you know, is it a safe place for people to walk their dog around the block where they live? Is it a safe place to go shopping? You know, things like that. I think is a lot better. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of difficult. You can't really get rid of functional classification because state statute requires it, and state statute requires it because federal regulations require that we use the federal functional classification system for granting reasons. But the other issue that I think is even more important is the road widening issue. Widening a road does not improve traffic congestion. That is just a fact. It has been proven time and time again for over 30 years. A 4-lane widening a road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes is not going to improve traffic congestion. If anything, it's going to get worse. The University of California found that for every lane you add to a road, you increase traffic congestion by 1%. Not to mention the fact that road widening costs a ludicrous amount of money, both to do it originally and to maintain the road widening. And lastly, with regard to what Commissioner Bearden said earlier about, you know, if we build out bus lanes or bike lanes, will people even use them? Yes, they will. There are studies that show this. It's been proven time and time again in practice. I mean, obviously, when we added if you build an unprotected bike lane on State Road 64 out east of the interstate, no one's going to use it because it's an unprotected bike lane where you have to go miles to get anywhere. But especially in the more urban areas, yes, it would improve use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is John Kalovich, and I live in Manatee County. I would like to agree with you two from the Planning Commission. I totally believe you got to stop the building. You got to stop it. And I say that because the infrastructure is not there.
microphone a little further away from you.
Okay,
Thank
right about
you.
here?
There's a lot of feedback.
Okay. And I believe you need to stop that and build the infrastructure first. You really do. And I say that only because if you don't, and I'm old school like you had mentioned, usually infrastructure comes first and then the building. It seems like you guys are doing it backwards and we're not getting anywhere. It's the same old, same old. Now we have 2 decades of the same thing happening. So why not try something different? Why not look at something different and stop it? Get the infrastructure set up like it's supposed to be. Most of the people in Manatee County want that, and they're not getting it. You guys need to listen to the people of Manatee County. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I don't see anyone on the phone. No, I'll see here. I'll close public comment. I'll just go around the room. Anything from staff to close out today?
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, for the record, Nicole Knapp. This concludes our presentation. I don't know if there's any additional follow-up questions. We, like I mentioned at the beginning, we wanted to circle back to you, though, to have the stormwater discussion. I don't know if anybody wants to make recommendations today of how you would like what topics covered at that presentation, or if you want us to follow up with a message to you so you can think about it more and put it in writing.
What's new about stormwater from the Planning Commission that we want to cover?
As far as stormwater goes, again, I think the county needs to look at the stormwater design manual and update it to the more current criteria. I know there were some attempts years ago to do that, to allow for, more modern type of infrastructure, green infrastructure, and so forth. And again, that manual really hasn't been updated for 30 years. So that's an integral part of the stormwater process, is to make sure that the rules and regulations for implementing it is there, or have the ability to be there and not impede innovative processes.
Why don't we do something during a regular meeting? You can append it to an existing one and then see who shows up to it. Start with that. When I met with Tom, I had a follow-up with Public Works, Tom, all the people. There wasn't really a whole lot new. It was just identifying a funding source, and then they were going to potentially bring in some projects into the CIP this year as a recommendation, because there's no stormwater fee or anything like that. So it would just factor into the normal process. But why don't we just follow up in a regular meeting and we can have some folks attend?
So would you, just to make sure I'm clear, you would like a report at the end of one of the regular or land use one, whatever can accommodate, and the Planning Commission can either, they can't attend unless it's a joint work session, but they could watch. The motion on the table was to direct staff to create a joint work session for transportation and stormwater. So I need further, which you can't give direction, you can't take action today, but I need more clarity on how to proceed because of the motion on the floor from March 5th, I believe is the day.
Well, we have a regular meeting. Why don't we append it to that, a joint meeting? See if we can be efficient with that. Okay. Yeah, take it from there, since you have the direction there, so.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's going to be dialogue and discussion.
When discussing with Public Works, they're a little confused on what you want to hear about.
I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't ask.
Okay. So, I mean, Commissioner Brown, you made a statement about the stormwater manual, but that doesn't give us direction on what you would like to hear at a joint workshop. I think we all understand that it needs to be updated, but that can't be done at the moment.
SB 180.
But what else do you want to hear about if we do have a workshop? There's a lot of different things. There's about maintenance. We have things that we do with stormwater that involves maintenance. We have the manual that we use to review new projects. So we're not clear on what you want to see at a workshop.
I have Commissioner Prosser on with her hand raised. Why don't I start with her? I haven't heard from her in a while. Go ahead, ma'am. And then back to Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, I unfortunately will have to step out, but I just wanted to thank you and the rest of the commissioners for this joint work session. It's been very, very informative. I think it also will help the general public to understand not only how things function within the county, but what we can and cannot do. It would be lovely if we could just make our own rules and not defer back to necessarily the state. But I want to thank you. This has been very, very helpful. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Why don't, in the interest of time, you just sync with the Planning Commission members, since the request came from the commission, and then we can formulate the right topics and joint meeting if where necessary.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz, any comments? Commissioner Ballard? No, I don't have anything. Commissioner Shulo, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner McCann, I see you're unmuted there. Any comments, sir?
Yes, definitely. I heard the whole thing today. I think it's great. I think we're spending in a lot of wrong places. I think the Lorraine Road isn't a priority because Cruz steered it that way. It was a priority until such time that, we did the CIP last year. I stopped funding for something. We're funding a lot of things we don't need to fund. We're spending money like drunken sailors in a Liberty port. And, the thing is that if you don't start listening to the people, you're going to have a problem. So, I just sat back and watched everything today and listened to everything today. And I just want you guys to keep going the way you are. I think it's fantastic.
Commissioner Bearden, any comment?
Yeah, I think today was a waste of time. I think it was the same raw situation. Nothing was accomplished. I think Manatee County is headed in a direction that, is not going to be beneficial for the future generations of this county. They're going to be gridlocked in traffic. We still have yet have a plan on exactly how we're going to execute this. And all I keep hearing is the same excuse that, we don't have any money. Well, maybe we're not allocating that money in the right places. Maybe that's it. But I just felt like today was another waste of time of the 3.5 years that I've been on this board. We haven't made a dent on doing anything. Our mindset is just completely, we're in definitely different directions as far as the board goes. With the different mindset and principles that we have when we think about local government. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'll close out today on a bit more of a positive note. Go ahead, sir. I'll close out. Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment about the time not being complete, but I also want to say I appreciated this meeting today, being asked to perform something. I need information to do that. You guys sharing that information was productive. If selfishly only for me, thank you for that. That's all I have to say. I can appreciate that we feel like it's a slow boat to nowhere, but I appreciate the information that you shared today.
Yep. And I'll just close out. I'd like to say thank you to staff for putting this together. It's not easy, so I appreciate that. And thank you for those who came in person to attend and participate. I think we have some homework to do. I think hopefully we reiterated that at the Planning Commission, certainly not the board. We can always make the direction to the Planning Commission, but I'd prefer to see something naturally come up. This comprehensive plan is moving forward. It's more modest in what we're trying to accomplish given the preemptions today. But I certainly hope to see something original come out of the commission, new ideas to consider, some direction for staff, for the board to consider as well. They can be amendments to transportation element, anything really, port amendment if you have ideas there. But I certainly hope to see more of that in the future because you have the authority to do that. Don't think you don't, and don't say that you don't, because the statute does give you express authority to amend codes and plans and make those, well, not amend, but recommend changes to the board. So I would encourage you to exercise that muscle because you have it. And lastly, just thank you all very much to the board for taking the time to come out today. You have a good one. Take care. Yep.